Our story kicks off with our main guy thinking back to how things were just a few days ago. The guild was buzzing with people, but his story actually kicks off way back when. Back when he was just a tiny kid, a mercenary group snatched him up, and he basically grew up on the battlefield with a sword in his hand before he even knew any better. He was still grinding as a mercenary until just recently, and he actually loved that life, just vibing with his squad and taking on missions. He finally hits a new town, and as he's wandering the streets, one building totally catches his eye. He spotted it right away. The local adventurer guild. The perfect place for him to start his life over from scratch. He checks his gear and sees he's down to just his leather armor and that one massive greatsword on his shoulder. And besides that, he's only got he was down to his last few silver coins and totally broke. But even at rock bottom, he knew one thing for sure. He really needed a plan. He was not about to end up living on the streets, so he had to make a move fast before he lost his home for good. He stands in front of this massive quest board and realizes there are way more jobs than he expected. From hunting down monsters to he's stuck doing nothing but boring chores, and to him, this legendary guild feels more like a cheap shop that just handles random odd jobs. He looks down at his rank tag and remembers that being a bronze rank really holds him back from the cool mission. Plus, going solo makes everything way harder. So he just stares at the board trying to figure out his next move. He can't just pick any job he wants, and while there's work out there, the only options left are the absolute worst of the worst. Right as he's trying to figure out his next move, a hand suddenly taps his shoulder, and a voice calls out to him. He spins around to see a friendly blonde guy waving him down, asking if he's looking for a job. The stranger says he looks like a total pro with a sword, and asks if he wants to team up since he's riding solo. The blonde adventurer cuts right to the chase and asks the guy if he's down to join his squad for a mission. He says their squad is a decent size, but they're getting crushed because nobody can hold down the front line. He thinks back to his days as a mercenary, knowing the old him would have shut down this offer in a heartbeat. He thinks being a mercenary is just being hired muscle for cash. You get your freedom, but you have zero backup and people will just use you until you're done. Since the job is super risky, he always double-checks the client and every little detail before he ever agrees to a contract. He's standing there looking totally stressed, realizing his usual pro skills are hitting a massive wall because the blonde guy gets real close as I tell him the payout for this group hunt is way bigger than any solo gig out there. He locks in with a dead serious look as he stares ahead, finally realizing the truth. He finally caves and asks what the job actually is, making the blonde guy super hyped as he asks if he's finally interested. But look, it's simple. All those rules go right out the window now that he's totally broke. Wait a second. Make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more. Stick around for more secret manga bangers, and I double dare you to drop a comment. Drop a comment because I'm totally loving this, and I bet most of you are too. If you guys aren't going to do it, then let's just keep this story moving. Lulun's got a massive grin as he kicks things off, telling everyone that a brand new member is officially joining the squad today. He points out that the 5 of them right there are the squad that's going to crush this mission together. Since there's a new face in the crew, Lulun thinks they should do some quick intros so everyone knows exactly who's who. He starts by introducing Lauren as the new guy who's going to be holding down the front lines right next to him, and Lauren just keeps it chill, saying he's hyped to work with the squad. Lulun introduces his childhood friend Naren, and they're both dreaming of hitting it big as legendary top-tier adventurers. Naren is only a copper rank thief right now, but she's totally locked in and taking the job super seriously. Next, Lulun heads over to Oxy, the team's copper rank mage who's super quiet and always stays hidden under her hood. He says Oxy and Naren met the second they joined the guild, and they've been totally inseparable ever since. Lulun starts hyping Oxy up, telling Lauren she's so cracked she can cast 3 whole spells a day. But Lauren just gives her a blank stare and asks if that's even supposed to be impressive. Lulun is just about to introduce the next person when someone else at the table totally cuts him off to speak first. Lapis raises her hand to do her own intro, and Lulun is totally down, telling her to go for it. She turns to Lauren with a massive grin and tells him she's super happy to meet him. She introduces herself as Lapis, a priestess for the god of knowledge, but she's still a total newbie who just started the job. She looks him straight in the eye and says she's hyped for them to crush this mission together. Lauren just stands there frozen for a second. Then he gives her a quick nod and just says okay. Lulun jumps in to say Lapis has been a total lifesaver since moving to town. Even though Lapis admits she can only fire off 2 spells a day. Lauren looks totally unimpressed, basically wondering if this is even supposed to be a big deal. Then Alalon points at his chest with a cocky grin, reminding everyone that he's the copper-rank swordsman leading this whole squad. He winks at Lauren and tells him he better remember the name Lulun, because he's definitely going to be a legendary hero one day. Naren starts gassing him up as the strongest guy in the world, and even though Lulin acts all shy, Naren says being that humble is just more proof he's a wow. Lulun figures it's the perfect time to share his origin story, talking all about how he found a hero's book back when he was just a kid. Everyone's totally hyped, but Lauren's just sitting there, stressing over the team balance, since it's literally just him and a bunch of girls. This is a total 180 from his mercenary days, where girls were super rare. And even though they could definitely scrap, the whole vibe was just different. He's mostly cool with that part, but the real nightmare is something else entirely as he stares down at his drink. The minutes are just dragging on while Lulin and Naren keep yapping, and Lauren is honestly wondering if they're ever going to stop. He finally lets out a massive sigh, cuts Lulun off, and asks if they can just get to work and talk about the mission already. Naren gets super heated and snaps at him, telling him to stop killing the hype right when the story was getting to the best part. Lauren just watches them, knowing that a group with this many girls is a total magnet for drama, and things are already starting to get messy. He feels like he just joined the most annoying squad imaginable, and is totally regretting his life choices. But anyway, he knows they gotta get moving, because just sitting around talking isn't gonna make them any money. Lauren kicks back and gets straight to the point, telling them they might be doing fine, but he's actually totally starving. They brought him here for a job, so he tells them to cut the talk and get to work, asking if anyone's got a problem with that. Lulun stops for a second to think about it and realizes the guy's actually right. So he just goes ahead and agrees with him. He decides to speed things up, telling the group that since they're all friends now, it's finally time to get down to business. Naren is totally not having it, giving Lulun a massive pout and asking if he's seriously planning on dragging this guy along. She points her finger right at Lauren and calls him out, saying he's just an ex-mercenary who'd do any dirty job for cash, and she wonders if they can even trust him. Lauren just sits there taking the heat, and he figures her narrow view of his old job is honestly pretty typical. He stares down at his boots as the silence drags on, knowing that's how everyone sees mercenaries. But then he totally messes up. He doesn't let it shake him and brings up his situation again, reminding everyone that he's totally broke and absolutely needs this win. Lulun stays quiet while Lauren reminds him he's there for a specific mission, asking one last time if anything is actually going to stop them from getting to work. Lulun realizes Lauren is totally right and decides to back him up right then and there. He flashes a grin and tells the group that since they finally sized each other up, it's time to get into the real details of the mission. Naren is totally not having it, so she crosses her arms with a massive pout and asks Lulun if he's really serious about bringing this guy along. Next, she turns to the priestess and asks Lapis if she's actually down to bring a mercenary onto the squad. Lapis stays totally chill and takes a second to think, wondering how she's even supposed to explain what's going on in her head. She's super blunt and tells the squad she actually thinks bringing him along is a solid move. Lauren just watches Naren lose it, complaining that this is exactly what happens when a sheltered church girl has no clue how mercenaries actually roll. Lapis doesn't let the comment faze her at all, and she puts a hand to her chest while admitting that, yeah, she totally grew up in the church, and she probably has no clue how the mercenary life actually works. She flashes a huge, confident grin and tells them she still trusts her gut when it comes to reading people. Lauren lays it out straight. He's not sticking around for long, telling the crew he's only here for this one mission, so they just have to deal with him for now, and Lulun flashes a grin and says he's totally down for Lauren to join the squad for good. But Lauren stays dead silent and keeps his back turned as the squad sits down to get serious, and Lulun cuts right to the chase, telling them their next mission is a goblin hunt. He's heading 3 days out to clear a pack of monsters from the woods, but it's basically just a standard mission for him. Naren looks seriously ticked off by the news and asks if he's talking about Ein Village, and he tells her she's right. She starts whining right away, saying this mission is way too easy, and they totally should have taken that better job instead. Oxy jumps in and asks Naren if he's talking about that mission to go check out those brand new ruins. She shuts that idea down fast, telling Naren there's no way they're getting that gig, because the guild only gives the big jobs to parties with way more experience, but Naren isn't buying it at all, huffing that if they keep settling for these tiny jobs, they're going to be stuck doing low-level work for the rest of their lives. Lulun stays hyped as usual, telling her that if they just crush these small jobs and prove they're legit, the guild will definitely start giving them the big-time quests. Lauren gets straight to the point and asks exactly how many goblins they're dealing with, but Lulun just flashes a big, chill smile and admits he's totally clueless. He says their only lead is from a villager who saw them in the woods and totally bailed, which leaves Lauren is totally stressed out, but Lulun doesn't even care, saying it doesn't matter how many there are since they're just basic goblins. Lauren looks down at his armored hand and figures these guys won't be much of a problem anyway. With the plan finally ready, Lulun asks if everyone is down to head out tomorrow morning in the squad. Everyone's on board, so Lulun tells them to grab their gear and meet up at the city's east gate. Lauren checks his pockets and realizes his last 3 coins will only cover a few days of food and a place to crash. So buying medicine is basically impossible now. He rolls up to the east gate the next morning ready to grind. But it turns out he's the only one who actually showed up. He's just hanging by the wall while the guard keeps a close eye on him, wondering if he totally messed up and showed up way too early. The gate guard shouts over to Lauren, noticing he's a total stranger and asking if he's just in town to find some work. The guard notices Lauren looks like a total zombie and asks if he even slept, and Lauren just quietly admits he's beat. Lauren explains he's just waiting for a meeting, and the guard nods along, agreeing that starting this early is a total drag for both of them. He says being this tired is a rough way to start when you've got a massive day of work ahead. The guard just laughs and tells him to keep talking just to help Lauren finally wake up. He casually admits he's just trying to kill some time because his shift is super boring, and then he asks if it's her first time in Kaffa, and that's when Lauren realizes he didn't even know the city's name. The guard is losing his mind that Loren just wandered in without a clue, but Loren just shrugs and says things got pretty wild. The guard tells him he better memorize the name right now, bragging that even if it's not the royal capital, it's still a legit town where the food there is fire, the people are actually cool, and at the end of the day, it's the place he calls home. The guard asks where Lauren spent the night, so Lauren just tells him he crashed right around the corner. The guard knows these streets and points out a cool shop nearby, even though the area is a total dump, thinking Lauren might have stashed it there after her shift. The guard mentions home, and it hits Lauren hard that he's never actually had a place to call his own. His life as a mercenary was just him jumping from one war zone to the next like a bird that never stops to rest. He honestly can't imagine staying in one place forever, but even so, he's still pushing forward. Standing there with the guard, he realizes that having a hometown is actually a pretty sweet deal after all. The guard suddenly spots someone walking up and asks if that's Lauren's partner finally showing up, and he's totally... Lauren looks over and makes it clear that this guy is just a temporary partner for this one specific job. Lulun waves as he walks over, and Lauren is totally caught off guard by how early he showed up. The guard leans in close and warns Lauren that he needs to ditch that group the very first chance he gets. The guard keeps yapping, warning Lauren that any squad with a pretty boy leader and a bunch of girls is just a total disaster waiting to happen. He tells him to watch his back, but Lauren just stares, thinking the guy is being more salty than helpful, but the guard screams for him to give it his all, and Lauren walks away, knowing he just has to finish this one last mission before he ditches these people for good. Lulun finally catches up with the gang and asks if he kept them waiting, and that's exactly when, once he sees everyone is geared up, he tells the squad they better get moving because it's a long 3-day hike to Ein Village. Lauren is totally losing it and asks why they aren't taking a carriage, but Lulun admits they blew all their cash on gear and are now too broke to pay for the ride. Lauren sighs and suggests they just find a cheap shared ride to jump on, and Lapis is totally down for that. Right then, someone asks if they're struggling, and Lauren looks over to see a gloved hand offering her some spare change. It's Lapis, and she's standing there with a massive grin, telling everyone she's got 10 copper coins they can use. He says this is way more than enough to cover the carriage ride to the village and back with no problems at all. Lauren just stands there frozen, staring at the coins Lapis is holding out because he's totally shocked by the offer and has no idea what to do. He's totally speechless, but Lapis tells him not to be shy about it. She explains she's just lending him the cash, and by doing him this favor now, she figures she can totally use him for backup later, and she's got a massive grin on her face while she thinks about it. She winks at him and tells him to just see it as a smart investment for the future, but before Lauren can even say a word, Lulun shouts from across the way, waving everyone over because he finally scored them a ride. He scored a spot on a carriage heading straight to Ein Village for just 5 copper coins. Lapis just looks up at Lauren with a smirk, basically telling him to stop overthinking because it is what it is, and I'm so hyped for this. Lauren finally caves and agrees to take the cash, and while she's totally hyped for him, he looks like he's just completely dead inside. With the cash secured and their ride waiting, Lapis cheers that it's finally time for the squad to hit the road. Lauren's totally stressed out, sighing because he's somehow already deep in debt before the mission even kicks off. As the squad heads out past those massive city gates, Lauren is already thinking this whole trip is going to be a total drag since they have such a long way to go. Thought. Inside the carriage, Lulun is finally in a great mood, telling the squad he's just hyped they actually scored a ride, while Naren leans over to the driver and tells him that this ride is a total lifesaver for the whole squad. As the carriage rolls down the empty mountain road, Naren keeps going on and on about how walking this whole way would have been a massive waste of time. The driver just grins and says it's totally fine, since he was already heading home after selling his crops and had the extra space. But then he asks if they're the ones. These guys are the ones meant to handle the goblin mess in his village, so he's trying to get them there ASAP, while Lapis gives him a polite thank you, even though she's low-key thinking that if he actually cared about his village, he would have given them a way better deal on the fare. Mulan steps up with total confidence and tells the driver they've got the goblins covered, and while the old man thinks they look like a solid crew, he's still not totally sure. Lauren's just sitting there looking totally stressed out because he wanted to sit everyone down and make a real plan. But he finally realizes that's just not happening with this wild crew. Lauren helps get the carriage cover all set and asks the driver if it looks okay, and the old man says it's perfect and thanks him for the help. The crew pulls over to set up camp, and the driver suggests calling it a night so they can head out early and reach the village by noon tomorrow. He doesn't wait around and tells the squad he's crashing early, then just bails. Lulun looks over at the squad and asks if they should probably crash for the night too. Naren is finally ready to quit whining about being tired and how much her butt hurts from the ride, so Lulan speaks up and tells Lauren that the two of them are taking over the night watch. Lauren's a little shocked and asks if they're actually going to be partners for guard duty. Lulun just shrugs it off since staying awake is way too hard. So he and Lauren are just going to take turns. Lauren can't even believe his ears and asks if he's actually serious about having only one person on watch at a time. He points out that it's basically common sense to have at least two people on guard duty, especially since things are getting so sketchy. Sure, soldiers and adventurers keep the roads safe, but they're still camping right in the open where literally anyone could spot them. Lauren keeps nagging about why they aren't all taking turns on watch, but Naran totally snaps and asks if he's got a major problem with how they run things. She snaps that the leader already made the call, so he needs to shut up and just follow orders like everyone else. Lulun totally ignores the drama and just asks Lauren which one of them is taking the first shift. Lulun heads off to bed and leaves the first watch to Lauren, who says he'll just wake him up when it's time to switch. Lauren's all alone by the campfire, staring into the flames and letting out a deep sigh as he starts his watch. But then he hears a creepy noise coming from the tent and stops dead to listen. He starts sweating bullets as he finally realizes what's actually going down back at the camp. But it gets way more awkward when high-pitched gasps and moans start coming from the tent for everyone to hear. Lauren is totally stressed because they're standing right in the open, and hearing two different girls' voices is making him lose it. He just drops his head into his hands, muttering about how the guys in this party seriously have zero self-control. Lauren's just sitting by the fire, realizing his backup isn't coming, and he can pretty much forget about getting any sleep. He knows sleep is totally off the table tonight, and looking at the empty room, he really starts to miss his old mercenary crew. He thinks back to those nights they'd all just chill by the fire, eating and talking after a long day of work. They used to promise each other that as long as they survived the next fight, they'd be okay. There was always a chance they'd run into each other again, somewhere down the line. Looking back at all that blood and the insane chaos of those fights, he knows his chances are basically zero. But he's still wishing for it anyway, just so he can see those faces one last time. A voice asks him what's wrong, and he doesn't waste a single second before reaching for his sword. He whips around ready to fight, but it's just Lapis looking totally shocked that she actually scared him. She says sorry right away, telling him she didn't mean to scare him while he was totally zoned out. Lapis gives a nervous little smile and tells Lauren the truth. That noise was actually coming from the tent right next to hers. She didn't get a single second of sleep because things were so bad, and Lauren just nods along, agreeing that the whole situation is a total disaster. The two of them just sit there in silence for a bit while the fire crackles away. Lapis brushes her hair back, saying she's staying right here until she's actually sleepy or the neighbors finally wrap it up. She looks his way and asks if he's cool with her hanging out by the fire for a bit. Lauren wonders if all adventurers are this wild, but he figures it makes sense when you might not even be alive by tomorrow. Lapis stares him down and says she'd love to tell him he's totally wrong, but she admits that dealing with this kind of stuff is actually just a normal part of their job. She stares into the fire, glad everyone's hyped, but she really wishes they'd read the room before starting a scene. She points out that since most gods tell people to go out and have kids, some folks actually think they're doing something holy just by making more human. Lauren looks her way and admits she totally didn't see that coming. He figured priests were supposed to be super serious, but after seeing Lapis and her wild healing, he realizes he was totally wrong about it. He stared at the stars and asked her how many gods are even out there and which one she's actually representing. Lapis reveals she serves the god of knowledge and corrects him, saying, "You don't count gods like regular people, you count them as pillars." Lauren warns her to watch her back, because some priests out there will go crazy if you talk trash about their gods. He says sorry and explains that since he grew up as a mercenary, he's not exactly the most book-smart guy around. Lapis listens for a bit, then asks why a guy with his past would even want to be an adventurer. Lauren goes quiet for a second, then just says his mercenary group basically doesn't even exist anymore. Lapis says sorry for asking, but Lauren just brushes it off, since this kind of craziness happens all the time in their world. He grips his fist and says, "You win some and lose some." But his old crew just happened to be on the wrong side of a total beatdown. Lauren says he could have just joined a different squad and kept working as a mercenary. But there was one huge problem. He was way too broke to even leave the town he'd run to, so he had to survive using the only thing he had left, his insane strength. Lapis nods along and says she finally gets it, confirming his name is Lauren, and admitting he looks like he can totally hold his own. She looks at that massive sword and asks if the blade is seriously as wide as her waist. Lauren's standing behind this massive slab of iron, and man, this weapon is a total beast that makes every other piece of gear look tiny. Lapis is totally stunned. He can even lift that massive blade. But Lauren reminds her that in a real fight, you can't always count on having both hands free. He reveals that he's actually trained to swing that thing with just one hand, whether he's using his left or his right. Lauren stares her down and asks if she really wants to see if that blade is wider than her waist. Lapis doesn't flinch at all. She just smirks and tells them she's totally down for that. Lauren's just standing there, clutching the hilt, looking totally unsure as he asks if they're seriously about to do this. Lapis stands right next to the giant blade to show off the size difference, smiling as she asks how it looks and joking that she's way thinner than the sword. Lauren just hits her with his usual serious face, but he eventually gives up and agrees that she's totally thin. Lapis tries to speak up, but Lauren shuts her down, claiming there's no doubt his weapon is way thicker than she is. Lapis is just nodding along like it's totally obvious, but then Lauren points out that her butt is actually thicker than the sword. That wraps up the argument, and as Lauren looks back, he realizes the sun is finally starting to come up. Lapis realizes he's totally right and admits she was so lost in their conversation that she didn't even notice the sun coming up. Lawrence kicks back by the campfire and apologizes for keeping her up all night, figuring his gritty mercenary stories wouldn't really interest a priestess, but Lapis shuts him down and says she was actually super into it, and Lauren's just glad to hear that. It's a freezing morning, so Lauren says it's time to hit the road. And Lapis is totally down just as the rest of the squad starts waking up in the tent. Lulin crawls out looking like a total zombie and asks why it's already morning, completely lost about what happened to their shift rotation. Lulun finally wakes up and asks Lauren why he wasn't called for his shift, but Lauren just shrugs it off and tells him not to sweat it since it's already over. The old driver sees everyone finally moving and tells them to scarf down their food so they can hit the road, since the village is super close now. Lauren stares at the cold ashes of his campfire and realizes his pockets are totally empty, swearing that once this job is over, he's got to find a way to actually get rich. The wagon finally pulls up, and the driver yells out that they've officially made it to Ein Village. Lapis stares at the massive wall of trees and realizes the woods are super thick, thinking the forest looks like it goes on forever. Lauren's totally down because she's sure that's exactly where all those goblins have been coming from lately. Yularen wants to track down where the monsters were last seen to start the search, while Lulun is already getting totally hyped up. He yells at the whole squad to stop waiting and just rush into the woods right now. Lauren cuts him off right there, shoving her hand in his face and telling the kid to hold on because they've got other stuff to do first. He reminds them that since the village asked for help, they've got to go talk to the locals before the hunt even starts. Lauren stops the squad and says they got to talk to the village chief first to get the real scoop on everything. He stops them to drop some intel first, explaining that knowing exactly where the enemies are and how many they're facing is the only way to make a real plan. Plus, ignoring the guy who's paying them is a total diss, but Naren doesn't care, and just tells him he's being way too annoying. She thinks there's nothing to worry about since it's just a basic goblin hunt, and she's being way too cocky. He's totally over it, telling him to just leave a note for the driver and asking why he's wasting so much time on such an easy mission. Lauren gets totally serious and tells her to stop acting like this job is beneath her, asking who she thinks is really the one in charge. He calls her out for being totally unprofessional, saying even those mercenaries she hates actually have enough common sense to respect their client. The village chief finally steps in to chill everyone out, saying he'll handle the intros as long as they get to work right away. Sarf gives Naren a quick head pat to chill her out, but she just mumbles his name while looking totally frustrated. Once the arguing finally stops, Lauren takes charge and tells the group he's going to be the one leading from the front. Lulun starts barking out the plan, telling Naren to cover him while Oxy and Lapis hold down the middle, and he tells Lauren to stay way in the back and keep an eye out for... He's basically hunting for a fight and acting like a total boss, smirking as he says they should wrap this up fast so the villagers can finally chill out. He points right at the trees and tells the squad it's finally time to head into the forest. Naren tags along, grumbling that they should just ditch that annoying mercenary since they're strong enough on their own, but Oxy looks back and reminds her that Lauren is the one who has to be their shield when the fighting starts, and honestly, they don't really have a choice about him. Now that he's tagging along, Lapis keeps the vibes high, promising she'll have her healing magic ready the very second anyone gets hurt. Naren's not having it, telling her she's totally wasting her magic and needs to save it for when Sarf gets hurt, but Lauren just gives a super tired reply, and the village chief tells them to stay safe as they head out. But the squad marches straight into the woods without a single clue about the goblins waiting for them. They're supposed to be hunting. But since they totally ignored Lauren's advice, they're just wandering aimlessly through this massive forest until the boredom finally kicks in, so Naren starts talking to get Sarf's attention while they keep pushing through the thick trees. Lulin spots something off to the side and points it out, telling the squad he found some raspberries nearby, and then Aaron's totally down for that, saying it's been way too long since they've had fresh berries, so they're definitely stopping to pick some. Even Oxy gets totally sidetracked, kneeling down to check out the moonlit grass and fox bamboo, because she's shocked there are so many rare materials just sitting around. Lapis is totally freaking out, because everyone is slacking off, so she finally speaks up and asks if they should actually be hunting those goblins instead. She's busy gathering snacks and plants, but the group totally ignores her, leaving her feeling super bummed out while they just do whatever they want. Lauren stares at the mess and mutters that they've totally forgotten about the goblins, knowing they're just wandering through this massive forest with zero plan, so Lapis spins toward him, sounding totally desperate as she asks if they're seriously just going to let these guys act like this. Lauren just crosses his arms and tells her she can do whatever she wants because he's staying out of it, while Lapis sighs, wishing the goblins would just hurry up and find them already. She looks at Lauren and says it looks like he finally ditched them too, then asks if he's still low-key trying to make things work. Lauren looks away and admits he's totally lost his hype now that this job has turned into a complete clown show. Lapis looks at Lauren and tells him he's honestly pretty impressive for staying so chill through all this, but she immediately snaps back, telling him that hearing him call her you feels totally wrong. Lauren sounds super awkward when he tries calling her Lapis-san, so she tells him to just use Lapis, even though she's totally confused why he made it sound like a question. Lauren admits he's basically never gotten to call a girl by her first name before, so he looks back and tells her she can totally just call him Lauren if that makes her feel more comfortable. Lapis gets all fired up and insists she's going to keep calling him Lawrence from now on. She starts waving her hands like crazy, totally flustered, as she explains that she's not being cold, it's just her normal way of speaking. Lauren gives her a little smile and tells her to just use whatever name is easiest for her to say. Lapis lights up instantly and smiles back, totally down to keep calling him Lauren-san. Deep in the pitch-black woods, creepy glowing eyes start popping up from behind the bushes. Lapis notices Lawrence acting super weird and asks him what's up, but he doesn't say a word. But Naren suddenly drops low and tells everyone to hold up because she definitely heard something. Lawrence's face goes dead serious the second he realizes they're about to get slammed. He starts grabbing for his massive sword while Lapis just stands there looking totally freaked out. Lulun's just chilling with a snack in his hand, asking if this thing is even a real monster. Naren keeps scanning the area, totally convinced she just heard someone's voice nearby. She doesn't even get to finish her sentence before an arrow zips out of the trees and slams right into Oxy's shoulder. Naren screams for Oxy as a pack of goblins burst out of the woods and catch them totally off guard. The whole squad is caught totally off guard, but Lauren snaps at them to stay locked in on the enemies right in front of them. Lauren swings his sword in a massive horizontal arc, clearing out everyone around him. Lapis looks totally stressed and asks if he needs her to cast a shield, but Lauren shuts her down on the spot, telling her he's just not looking for any of that right now. He stays totally locked into the fight, tearing through a goblin with one massive swing as he's scanning the edge of the woods, trying to see if the archer is hiding in the bushes. Lauren realizes he's at the worst distance for his massive sword and wishes he had a dagger to chuck, but another arrow zips right past his head, but he doesn't stop for a second as he charges through the madness. A goblin screams right in his ear, and Lauren grumbles that his last strike didn't go deep enough. Lulin screams at the goblins as they bolt, asking if they seriously think they're going to get away that easily. He screams that there's no way they're getting away and orders everyone to hunt them down. Lauren walks through the grass and admits he knows his word doesn't really matter, but he asks if they should stop before they get in too deep. But Lulin shuts him down and reminds him that these guys are here to wipe everyone out, and he shouts that the job isn't done until every single nest is gone. Naren jumps in to back him up and gets right in Lauren's face, asking why a mercenary is acting like such a big shot. Right before she bolts, she yells that the leader's word is law, and he better just shut up and follow. Lauren watches them leave, looking totally annoyed because he knows for a fact that wrecking those nests was never part of the deal. Lapis walks over and points out that the rest of the squad has already ditched them. Lauren just nods, looks him straight in the eye, and says that as far as she's concerned, she figures staying put is the best move since the other squad already has a mage anyway. She glues herself to Lauren for protection, but Lauren just gives her a look like, "Is that really the story you're going with?" Lapis just gives him a little smirk and says if that's how he wants to see it, they can just leave it at that. Lauren spots a dark trail on the ground and realizes it's goblin blood, saying it'll be a total piece of cake to follow them. While they're walking, Lauren asks Lapis for a total reality check on whether their squad is actually legit. He's dying to see how the leader handles a sword, and he's got a massive reason for it. He knows the deal with goblins. They're the main target because they multiply with anything and grow up way too fast, but by themselves, these guys are so weak even a normal dude could take them out. And let's just say they aren't the brightest. The real nightmare is how many of them there are, and Lauren knows that if you can't take them all out at once, your strategy is the only thing that's going to save you. But honestly, just look at how these guys have been acting lately. Seeing how slow they are to catch on, he's starting to think they're just winging it. He turns right back to Lapis and asks one more time, how strong is this leader for real? Lapis looks back and asks if he was actually a mercenary before all this started. She starts picturing those insane sword skills, like Hellfire Dance and Severing Wind, then just gives herself a confident nod. She asks him if he's ever heard the wild stories about that legendary mercenary known as the Sword Ogre. Lauren keeps a totally straight face while telling her he's at least heard that name before, but the rumors are simple. Face him and you're toast, but team up with him and he'll swipe all the glory, making him a total legend that everyone hates seeing on the battlefield. Lauren looks at her like she's totally lost it, asking how she could even compare their leader to a freak like that, but Lapis just laughs it off. She tells him that even if he brought 10 million guys who were just as skilled as Sarf, but honestly, they still aren't even close to the Sword Ogre's level. Lauren asks if they're seriously insane for trusting their lives to someone so mid, but Lapis just points out that he's stuck in the exact same mess right now. Lauren doesn't even try to fight it, just saying that being totally broke has him acting straight up crazy anyway. Lawrence is totally feeling the heat, complaining that his neck is so stiff he can barely even move. Lapis just grins while he's whining, making him ask why she's looking at him like he's a total hopeless case. The squad finally makes it to the spot, and Lulin points out a dark hole in the rocks, calling it the goblin nest. They spot a trail of blood leading straight into the hole, and Lauren realizes the tunnel is so cramped that only 2 guys can fit at a time. That totally kills his vibe, and since his giant sword is useless in this tiny space, he asks if they can just skip the whole thing. Naran's not playing games and tells him he can go home right now, but he won't see a single cent of that reward money. Lulun tries to keep things chill, telling Lauren it's only a goblin so he'll be fine, and then hands him a backup weapon to get the job done. He whips out that short sword he found earlier, even though the blade is super chipped and looks like total garbage. Lauren sighs and grabs the trashy sword, knowing it's still way better than heading into that cave totally empty-handed. Lulan takes charge and starts calling the shots, telling Oxy to prep a light spell while Neuron keeps a lookout. The crew stands right at the edge of the spooky cave entrance, and since everyone's hyped and ready, they finally decide to head inside. Oxy steps up and aims her staff, blasting a lightning spell that makes the whole entrance glow like crazy. Lauren's not impressed at all, asking why they're wasting mana on light when they could have just brought basic torches or lanterns like normal people. Noriane signals that the coast is clear of traps, but Sarf reminds everyone that villagers are still stuck inside, so they've got to move fast. Lauren isn't buying it, thinking there's no way it's this easy and that they're definitely walking straight into a trap. He's pretty sure it's a total trap, but he keeps his mouth shut and tells the squad they should just keep moving. Lauren lets out a big sigh and follows the group into the dark, narrow tunnel with his massive sword strapped tight to his back. The crew pushes deeper into the cave, and the only sound is their own footsteps echoing off the wet stone wall. Sarf scans the empty hallway, wondering if the goblins totally panicked and bailed since there isn't even a single guard on duty. He figures these goblins are way too stupid to plan ahead, and Oxy totally agrees, saying they were probably too beat up to even think about guarding the door. Lapis looks around the silent tunnel and points out that the group is moving way too fast. She turns to Lauren to see what he thinks about everything going down. Lauren stays on high alert, warning the group that the goblins are skipping the guards just to bait them into a massive trap deeper inside. Lapis is totally shocked and asks if these goblins are actually smart enough to plan ahead like that. Lauren admits he's no goblin expert, but even a pack of monkeys knows how to set a lookout, so let's face it. Lapis gets curious and asks him if he really thinks goblins are actually smarter than monkeys. She starts nerding out about how smart monkeys are, pointing out that they use tools and build their own societies just like humans. Lauren just stares at her, wondering why she's stressing over random facts right now, but he figures that's just how these priestesses of knowledge roll. Their chat gets cut off. The second Sarf freezes right in his tracks. Lapis catches the vibe shift and asks if he spotted something up ahead. Sarf squints into the darkness and points out a light up ahead that looks just like a room. Lauren realizes right then that if they can see light, the bad guys definitely know they're coming. Naren's worried they're walking straight into a goblin trap, while Oxy warns him that those archers are going to be a massive pain to deal with. Sarf steps up and says he's charging in first to block the arrows while the rest of the crew covers him. Lauren watches with her arms crossed, low-key impressed that this guy actually has the guts to charge straight into a trap down that narrow path. Oxy thinks this plan is a total death trap, but she agrees to use her shield magic to give them a fighting chance. Sarf tells her to just do it, even though she warns him she only gets 3 shots a day, and this is a total waste of 1. Lapis catches the look on Lauren's face and calls him out for clearly hating the plan. Lauren's just standing there with that massive sword on his back, wondering how the heck this is even going to work out. Lapis gets curious and asks what kind of move he'd pull if he was the one running the show. Lauren jumps in and warns the group not to even think about stacking fresh wood for a fire at the cave entrance. Sarf explains that the easiest way to clear a dead-end cave is to block the exit with fire and let the smoke do the dirty work. But Lapis points out they'd need a ton of oil to pull it off. Sarf just shrugs it off, saying greenwood won't even burn right, and since they're totally out of flint and oil, they might as well just quit and head home. Lauren hangs his head, thinking about how much it sucks to be flat broke with a leader like this, and Lapis can totally tell why he's so ticked off. Out of nowhere, Sarf finally speaks up and calls out Lauren's name. He shouts at Name to stop hiding in the back and get up to the front lines with him. Lauren looks totally stressed and reminds the group that he's got 0 defensive magic protecting him right now. Naren starts screaming that since Lauren's got that massive sword anyway, he should just use it as a shield, and Oxy thinks that's actually a pretty solid plan. Lauren stares at his weapon, knowing he can't even swing it in this tiny cave, and trying to use it as a shield would just be a heavy, awkward mess. Sarf just grins and says, "Sorry, but they can't waste 2 magic charges at once," so he's the one who's going to back Lauren up. Lauren realizes he's totally stuck with this plan and starts whining about how trash his luck has been lately, so he looks down at his gear and realizes he's just got to make it work if he wants to survive this total disaster. Sarf doesn't waste a single second and just charges ahead, screaming for everyone to get out of the way. Lauren's just standing there looking totally over it, thinking Sarf seriously needs to pipe down. The goblins up ahead are already on high alert, and Lauren knows that screaming like a total psycho just completely blew their cover. A massive wave of arrows comes flying their way, but they all just bounce off Sarf's magic shield like it's no big deal. Lauren watches closely and realizes that even though Sarf isn't even trying to block, the arrows just can't touch him. He finally realizes that magic is a total lifesaver in a mess like this, and then Sarf gets totally hyped and screams at the gang to keep pushing so they can end this fight right now. He launches high into the sky and dives right at the goblins to kick off the real fight. The ground literally crumbles under Sarf's weight, and he lets out a massive groan as he starts to fall. He faceplants hard into the dirt, totally clueless about what just went down. Naren watches the whole thing go down, screaming at him to just get back up. Lauren sees the whole squad about to charge in and tries to hold them back, but he moves fast, snatching Lapis by the back of her clothes and telling her to hold up as she lets out a surprised yell. He basically yanks her right off the ground to stop her from moving, and she lets out this super weird choking noise. Naren's down at the pit, begging Sarf to wake up, but Sarf is so beat he can barely even move. Lapis spots hidden traps all over the ground, and Lauren warns everyone to watch their step because things are getting dangerous. A massive swarm of goblins starts flooding out of the cave right in front of them, making it clear that things are about to get real. This was definitely no accident, and Lauren realizes a total mastermind is pulling the strings, meaning they're all in major trouble. Sarf flips through an old journal in the library and loses his mind over the stories, saying he can't believe there are people this epic in the world. He's just sitting there on the floor in a pile of books, calling the guy he's reading about an absolute hero. He stares at the drawings and says he wants to be just like them, going on wild adventures and becoming a total legend. He strikes a pose and shouts that he's going to be a legendary hero everyone respects, with Naren hyping him up. But then we snap right back to the present. The vibe has totally flipped. Naren is screaming that this can't be real, while Sarf stands behind her looking completely crushed. Things go south fast when Neuron screams and Sarf panics while reaching out, but then something totally unexpected happens. Suddenly, an arrow flies out of nowhere and slams right into his chest, making him scream his head off. He's staring ahead in total shock, cursing his trash luck because he can't believe he's in this mess. He's totally losing it because they're getting destroyed by what should have been just a few weak goblins. But now the whole pack is closing in with their weapons ready to strike. Lauren hangs back and keeps his eyes peeled, wondering if that super strong guy he saw earlier is actually the one running the whole show. Lauren stares at the leader and says it's way bigger than the others. But there's definitely something more to it than just its size. Lapis explains that some of these things are just born different, while others end up totally changing as they go along. She says that if a goblin gets enough experience, it can evolve into a total freak of nature that's way more dangerous than the rest. She checks out its gear and that staff and realizes they're dealing with a goblin magician. Since it's got magic and is actually smart, this thing is easily one of the deadliest high-tier threats out there. Lauren warns them they're totally doomed without a plan and says they need to bounce. But Lapis is freaking out about Sarf and the rest of the crew. The guys are already wiped out, slumped on the ground in a field of arrows, while Lulun just sighs at the total disaster. Lauren hears something creeping in the shadows and instantly knows they're in massive trouble. He screams that they're getting jumped from behind too, and Oxy totally loses it because their only way out is completely blocked. Lapis looks totally grossed out. She can't believe these low-level goblins are actually smart enough to pull off a pincer attack. Oxy raises her glowing staff and shouts for the sand to scatter and put everyone to sleep. She lets her magic loose, blasting a massive wave of energy right into the pack of monsters. The goblin magician is totally ready though, holding up a weird glowing stone. Suddenly, a massive flash of light explodes through the cave, turning everything totally white. Lauren covers his eyes from the blinding glare, wondering what the heck is up with that light. As the light clears, he looks over and sees Lapis totally wiped out on the ground. He asks her what's wrong, and tries to figure out what the heck just happened to her. She's totally wiped out, staring up in pure shock because she can't believe this is actually for real. Lauren snaps her head back to the front as someone screams out, completely losing it over what they're seeing. Those goblins are still on their feet and closing in, and Oxy is totally freaking out because her magic didn't take down a single one. The whole squad starts backing up in a total panic as the goblins close in, and Oxy screams at the monsters to just stay away. Lulun completely snaps, screaming at the lead goblin to get the hell away from the girls. But the goblin doesn't care and just takes a massive swing right at Lulun's head. Lulun just stands there frozen as blood drips down, finally realizing his dream of being a legend is totally falling apart. Things get messy fast as one goblin yanks Oxy by her hair and another snatches up Neuron while they both scream for help. As everything goes dark, Lulun watches the monsters swarm him, thinking about how he was totally supposed to be the hero. Lauren watches the disaster from the sidelines, realizing those guys are basically toast at this point. He looks around and realizes the rest of the pack has totally cut off their only way out. He grabs onto Lapis to keep her steady and asks if she's seriously still stuck and can't move her legs. He leans in for a closer look, asking if her body has finally just totally quit on her. Lauren realizes things are going south fast, and with enemies closing in from behind, he knows they're totally trapped if they don't move this second. Lapis just stares while he's sweating buckets and freaking out, totally clueless about what his next move should even be. Suddenly, Lapis tells him there's no other way, and he just has to leave her behind and get moving. Lauren realizes her voice sounds totally different as she tells him she's just holding him back, and he could actually escape if he was alone. She looks down and tells him straight up that the goblins might keep the girls alive for a while, but a guy like him is 100% dead meat. She tells him to just ditch her and save his own skin, but Lauren keeps his answer short and starts reaching right for his back. With Lapis sitting there totally defeated, he turns his back and reaches for the handle of that massive sword. Lapis is totally lost and tries to speak up, but Lauren just shuts her down and tells her to keep quiet. He gives her one last warning to stay sharp, or she's going to end up biting her tongue while he handles this. Lapis closes her eyes and puts a hand over her heart, explaining that she's finally realized staying right by Lauren's side is exactly where she belongs. She gets totally fired up and clenches her fists, telling him straight up that she's staying by his side no matter what. She flashes him a wink and a smile, holding up a finger to say that if she does him a favor right now, who knows, maybe he'll be the one to help her out later on. Lauren just sighs and scoops her up like a sack of grain, telling her she better buckle up because it's about to be a wild ride. He heads straight for the light, knowing he's basically betting his entire life on one massive gamble. He pulls out his massive sword with total focus, yelling that they finally caught the goat, and then the goblins blocking the way start screaming like crazy and aiming their bows right at them. Arrows are zooming right at them, but Lauren moves like a flash and dives straight into the middle of it all. He holds onto Lapis tight and plows right through the first wave of enemies without slowing down at all. Lapis is getting tossed around like a rag doll, but even though she's hurting, she tells herself she's got to stay in the fight. Lauren sees her exit is totally blocked, so she's got no choice but to charge straight through the front. And right there, this goblin mage is standing guard in front of the very last exit tunnel. Lauren locks in and screams he's diving straight for it. But right as he makes his move, the mage unleashes a massive wave of fire that tears right through the air. Lauren spots the fireball and realizes it's zooming way faster than he thought, so he ducks his head and charges straight at that hooded monster anyway. The goblin points his finger to fire off another spell, but Lauren screams that he's way too slow to pull it off. So he just goes full throttle, launching himself across that massive gap, and he pulls Lapis in tight, and they start booking it toward the light at the end of the hall. Lapis is barely hanging on and tells Lauren he should just drop his gear already, but she lets out a painful groan as they keep pushing forward. But Lauren tells her to shut up and save her energy. He pushes ahead, knowing they barely escaped with their lives, and he realizes they need to get as far away as possible before more goblins show up, but then it hits him. Even though he had no other choice, he just sprinted deeper into the cave, going the totally wrong way from the exit. Lauren keeps pushing forward, but she's seriously starting to wonder if running straight into the dark is a huge mistake. He knows there's no going back now, so he's just praying he finds another way out somewhere up ahead. If that doesn't work out, they're both totally cooked. Lauren's tearing through the tunnel, muttering about how this job is way more of a headache than he signed up for. Lapis is blown away by how fast he's sprinting through the pitch black, but Lauren just tells her to shut up and let him focus. She's whining that being carried like a sack of potatoes is boring, so Lauren snaps and tells her to shut up, because he's literally just trying to stay alive. Lapis knows Lauren is right about the danger, but she's still totally not vibing with what's going on. She finally speaks up and tells them they need to try something totally different. Lapis is totally stunned and asks if he's using magic. But Lauren just wants to know if she can finally see the path now that it's all lit up. She tells him to quit dragging her around like she's just another piece of gear, so Lapis makes it clear she's not asking for anything wild, like a princess carry or anything. She figures the least he can do is give her a piggyback ride to make things a bit more comfortable. She waits a beat and asks him what he really thinks about the switch. Lauren's totally down for it since it's way faster, so she just hops right onto his back. As they keep pushing through the pitch black, Olympus starts to tell him something else. She leans in close and gives him a huge, heartfelt thank you for saving her back there. Lauren notices her voice is finally back to normal and starts wondering why she keeps switching it up like that. Lapis leans in and gets totally serious, asking him why he even bothered to save her. She calls him out for ditching the whole squad to die, just so he could come back for her. Lauren tries to act all chill, saying she just got lucky on a whim, and that he still owes her for that copper coin anyway. He basically tells her to just pick whatever reason she wants and leave it at that, but Lapis asks if she can just believe he's a good guy, but he shuts her down instantly, saying a nice guy wouldn't have ditched his teammates. She doesn't even care, telling him that since he's the one who saved her, she's always going to see him as a good guy. Lauren tells her to do whatever she wants, and she just flashes a huge grin while clinging to his back. They keep pushing through the shadows, but after a while, Lauren brings up what they were just talking about. He asks her about that super polite voice she used earlier, wondering if that's actually the real her. Lauren keeps lugging Lapis along, but he calls her out, asking if there's a real reason she just froze up like that. Lapis looks away, looking totally stressed, and tells him it's probably better if she just keeps her mouth shut. Lauren tells her he's not going to force the truth out of her, but he tells her everything would be way easier if she just came clean, so he could finally figure out what they're actually up against. Lapis stays quiet for a second, then she finally admits he's totally right. She figures since he's already seen that much, she might as well just spill the whole story. She kicks things off with a question, asking him what he really knows about the whole demonkind race. That question totally catches Lauren off guard, and he just repeats the name of the race while trying to figure out why she's even bringing them up. Turns out, this world is packed with all kinds of crazy races, besides humans and demi-humans, and the demons are just one of the many groups living here. Let's just say everyone else thinks these guys are total bad news. Demons are total beasts with insane strength and are born pros at magic, but they're also super heartless and don't care about anyone else. So, they'll do anything to get what they want and don't care who gets hurt. So it's no wonder everyone treats them like the villains. Even with that reputation, tons of humans act the exact same way. So it really just comes down to the person. Lauren remembers his old mercenary buddy telling him that it's a huge mistake to judge someone just because they're a demon. To make things worse, every church out there totally hates them because they don't even care about believing in God. The wildest part is they look like regular humans, but their eyes are this deep, glowing purple. Sure, a demon king pops up and freaks everyone out every now and then, but that doesn't mean they're all actually trying to take over the world. While he's carrying her, Lapis leans over his shoulder and asks if that's really the kind of race he's picturing in his head. Lauren just stares straight ahead with a super serious face, asking what the catch is, and then Lapis just smiles and tells him she's actually one of them, leaving Lauren totally shook as he asks if she's for real. Lauren points out she's literally a priest, and her eyes aren't even purple, so she's clearly not the one. Lapis straight up says she doesn't care about gods of love or peace, and the only reason she teamed up with the god of knowledge is because they both wanted the same thing. And since that god's only rule is to just keep learning as much as you can, she can pull off holy arts and sorcery because her god literally thinks magic is just another form of knowledge. That's a massive deal because usually following a god means you can't use magic at all. Lauren finally figures out exactly how she was able to pull off that light spell earlier. She finally realizes she's basically doing two jobs at once by being both a priest and a mage. He asks if her god's followers can pull off the same tricks, but Lapis tells him there are barely any who can. Seriously, not a single one of them is even close to being on her level. She's acting super smug, bragging that it's just common sense that demons are way more powerful than any human. Lauren admits she's totally right, because if people could actually use magic and holy powers together, everyone would be tripping over themselves to join her god's church. So he's left wondering why a literal demon would even care about being an adventurer anyway. He says he totally thought those demons just stayed hidden away in the central mountains. We're talking about places that are supposed to be totally impossible to get into or even escape from. It looks like they only stay away from everyone else because their home is literally in the middle of nowhere. Lapis drops a massive secret that demons are actually roaming the world all the time without ever getting caught, which totally blows Lauren's mind, but she explains that they look so human that as long as they play it cool, people just think they're gifted, while the ones who look super weird just stay hidden at home. But sometimes they actually nerf their own power before showing up, and Lauren is totally lost on the whole idea of a limit, so Lapis tells him that explains her whole situation. Then she grunts and moves her arm right in front of his face to show him. She shows him her hand and asks if he knows her body is just a total fake, while Lauren is completely stunned that she's already recovered enough to move her arm. Lauren is totally caught off guard and asks her to say that one more time. Lapis reveals that her whole body is a total lie, and every part of her, from her arms to her eyes, is just a magical fake she built herself. She tells him she's got to use her own special style just to get that body moving. She's burning through a ton of energy just to stay awake while he carries her along. Lapis switches gears and asks Lauren if he figured out why Oxy's magic totally failed to go off during the fight. She says a goblin wizard probably used a spell called Mana Lost to shut the whole place down. It's basically a massive field that shuts down everyone's magic the second they get close. A regular goblin definitely isn't that powerful, so she figures they've got to be using some kind of magic item to store all that mana. Lauren whips out a super weird object and asks if this is the magic tool she was talking about. He passes it to her while they're on the move, and Lapis takes one look, confirming that's definitely the item behind the trick. Lapis is totally weirded out that a low-level goblin has gear like this, but she's definitely glad it's not active right now. So the danger isn't constant anymore, but she tells Lauren it's still going to be a while before she can move her limbs again. She says they're totally lucky her eyes still work as they head deeper into the cave. Lauren asks if that's why she wanted him to ditch the item earlier, but Lapis says it's totally fine to keep as long as it stays turned off. Lauren asks why she's suddenly talking so weird, but she swears it's not because she's a demon. Lapis reveals that this is actually her real voice and how she normally sounds. The second her magic failed and things got real, her brain just instantly flipped the switch into total battle mode. Lauren gets that you have to lock in for a fight, but switching up your whole personality and voice is just way too much. He tells her he's finally figured out what's actually going down. Lauren keeps wandering through the dark, her head spinning from how absolutely wild this whole day has been. Lapis straight up admits that ditching her back there would have been the smartest move, but she's honestly so glad Lauren didn't listen to logic and carried her the whole way, so she makes sure to give him a huge thank you. She points out that even though demons have a bad reputation, they never forget when someone does them a favor. Lauren just shrugs it off, acting like it's totally no big deal. He tells her she can just owe him a favor and pay him back whenever she wants. He adds that the whole deal is totally pointless unless they actually make it out of this cave alive. While they keep going, Lapis asks him if he's noticed how creepy this cave feels, especially after that crazy goblin attack. He looks back and points out that even though they've walked a ton, there's still absolutely no sign of an exit. She thought they were just heading into a normal goblin cave, but Lauren totally agrees that something about this place is seriously off. They realize they've already walked past a bunch of spots that look like actual rooms where the goblins are living. Lauren keeps pushing forward with Lapis on his back, thinking about how those rooms are way behind them now. He was totally ready to turn back if they hit a dead end, but this path just keeps going, and he realizes the walls are way too perfect to be natural, like this whole place was. He looks back at Lapis and asks if they should just call it quits and head back the way they came. Lapis warns him that going back is a total nightmare, because they'd have to pass through that room all over again. Lauren just clicks his tongue in annoyance because he knows she's 100% right. They keep pushing forward, just hoping there's another way out waiting for them at the end of the tunnel. Lapis says if they actually find a way out like this, Santa's luck is way more insane than she thought. Lauren warns her not to bet on his luck, and she admits her own luck is pretty trash anyway. Lapis is just about to say more, but Lauren suddenly hears a noise and stops dead in his tracks. Lapis drops a massive shocker, revealing that her own parents actually took her eyes and limbs when she left the demon world just to nerf her power. Lauren is totally losing it, just repeating the word parents while looking completely wrecked by how heartless this is. Lapis just keeps going, saying that's the exact reason she joined such a chaotic squad to become an adventurer. Lauren finally slumps over and gives in, admitting her life is way more of a disaster than his, but she laughs about how Sarf and his crew are so brainless that hiding her identity was a total breeze. But Lauren tells her to keep her mouth shut. Lapis gets super choked up, explaining that her parents hid her real body somewhere in the human lands, and she's stuck here until she finds. Lauren tries to kill the awkward vibe, telling her he didn't mean to turn their bad luck into a competition. Lapis asks how she's even supposed to put herself back together, so Lauren tells her to just finish up and go ask her parents for help. But Lapis suddenly shouts his name to get him to look straight ahead, because hit a dead end. But Lapis points out that a dead end wouldn't be glowing like the path right in front of them. Let's try. Yells. Lauren spots a glow up ahead, and worries more goblins are lurking in the cave, but Lapis tells him she doesn't sense anything nearby. Lauren tells her to kill the magic light and starts creeping through the shadows. He picks her up and asks if she still can't stand, making Lapis feel super guilty as she apologizes for being such a total burden. Lauren says it's all good, but he warns her he'll have to drop her if things get too sketchy, and Lapis is totally fine with that, since she'd just be blocking his sword anyway. Lauren is watching everything like a hawk, just hoping they can wrap this up before he's forced to pull his sword. The two of them keep pushing deeper into the cave, heading straight for that tiny glow. They hit a wall at the end of the path, but Lapis spots light peeking through a tiny crack. She says she could totally squeeze through that tiny gap on all fours if she really had to. She points out that with her limbs all messed up, there's no way she's getting through that hole by herself. Lauren just watches her struggle, totally sure she's about to get stuck in there. Lauren looks at that tiny crack and realizes he's got to smash the wall down to get through. Since things are about to get super noisy, he tells Lapis to keep a lookout for trouble, and she just gives him a confident smile and says she's on. Lauren grabs his massive sword, wondering if he can actually finish the job before those guys catch up. He puts his whole body into the swing and smashes his blade right against the stone. As the rocks start breaking apart, he realizes the wall is soft enough for his plan to actually work. He keeps hacking away at the cave wall while Lapis just hangs back and watches him do all the work. Lauren just keeps pushing his limits until he finally smashes right through the thickest part of the stone. He's totally wiped out and leaning on his sword, so I tell Lapis the hole is finally big enough for them to squeeze through. Lapis gives him props but points out it took way too long. Though Lauren says they're totally fine since no one's caught up yet. He scoops her back up and asks if he should crawl through first to pull her out, while Lapis just keeps apologizing for being a total drag. Lauren looks at the hole he just made and realizes there's no turning back now. Breaking through took every last bit of his strength, and now he's just totally crashed out on the floor. He snaps out of it and asks what things are looking like on the other side. Lapis starts forcing herself through that super tight gap in the rocks. Lauren reaches out to help and tells her to grab his hand. He yanks her through until she finally catches her breath on the other side. Lapis bows to thank him for the save, but Lauren just shrugs it off like it's no big deal. He skips the small talk because he really needs her to check something out. He points at the massive stone building right in front of them and asks her what she thinks of the place. The two of them just stand there, totally clueless about what kind of crazy place they've stumbled into. Lapis is staring at the building in total shock, completely blown away that she's finally seeing real magic materials. Lauren's making zero sense, so he just straight up asks what that thing even is. Lapis explains that this is ancient tech that sucks magic right out of the air to power its own light. She's totally nerding out over the discovery, while Lauren just stands there thinking about how wild this ancient kingdom sounds. This massive kingdom from way back used insane magic to basically boss everyone around. Everyone from humans to beastmen lived there, and at their peak, they even had massive cities floating way up in the cloud. Then the whole place just poofed overnight, leaving every race to scramble and build the world we see today. Lauren thinks they just hit the jackpot, but Lapis warns him that the guild and researchers would just snatch it all for themselves. He's complaining that she's totally killing the vibe, but she's already asking if she can scrape some of the wall off for her research. Lauren points out the floor is already covered in broken bits from before, so Lapis snatches up a perfect piece and gets ready to bolt. Lauren keeps pushing through the pitch black with Lapis glued right to his side. He warns them that if this place is actually an ancient ruin, they're in big trouble from traps or monsters. But Lapis just clings to her glowing rock while he explains that it really depends because every single spot in that ancient kingdom was built for a totally different reason. Lauren asks what she's hinting at and tries to see if she can finally walk. But the girl just gives her a smile and says it's still not happening. She leans in close and tells him that for every deadly fortress out there, there's a totally useless building that doesn't matter at all. It's the most pathetic ruin she's ever heard of, literally just an ancient public toilet, and Lauren is totally losing her mind. She explains that these bathrooms have high-tech AC and plumbing but zero traps. Because let's be real, putting a guard in a bathroom would be totally insane. Lauren points out that having a guy to protect you while you're busy is actually a genius move, and Lapis admits she never thought about it like that, but she keeps talking, explaining that super dangerous ruins are actually way harder to find than the boring ones. Lauren knows they gotta figure out what this place was actually for first, and Lapis is totally on board with that plan. Lauren's really hoping this place isn't actually a death trap, but he tells Lapis to stay sharp while she hunts for magic and leaves all the fighting to him. He reaches back for his sword, praying that this massive blade is actually enough to stop whatever's creeping in the dark. He knows if things go wrong, they're totally toast, since there's no way they're fighting through that massive goblin army they passed earlier. And while the plan is to just... Lapis admits she's never been lucky enough for things to go that smooth. And Lauren totally agrees, saying he's never had a break. And since he doesn't believe in gods, he can't even pray for a miracle. Out of nowhere, Lauren reaches for his sword with insane speed, catching Lapis completely by surprise, and she stops dead in her tracks, totally freaked out by how his energy just shifted out of nowhere. She starts to ask him what's wrong, but Lauren shuts her down instantly and tells her to zip it. He stares deep into the shadows, sensing something move, and whispers that something is definitely headed their way. He plants his feet with Lapis still hanging onto his back, ready to pull out his massive sword the second he spots a target. Lapis tells him she can use her magic to slow those guys down, so he just needs to give her the signal when he's ready to make a move. Suddenly, a voice shouts from the shadows, totally shocked to see this scary-looking dude carrying a girl on his back. The strangers freak out and scream, wondering how anyone could be way out in these untouched ruins or if they're just seeing things. One of the guys jokes that if he was actually hallucinating, he'd definitely be looking at something way better than this. An older dude in the group checks them out and sees they're warm, so they're definitely human. But man, they picked a sketchy place to get lost. Suddenly, he spots a silver tag on Lauren's gear and realizes they just ran into a high-ranking silver adventurer. This young dude, Chuck, starts laughing, asking if they accidentally ended up in the ruins while running for their lives from a bunch of goblins. He can't stop laughing while telling Lauren that his luck is straight-up trash for ending up in a dump like this. Lauren just stares back and says his whole squad got wiped out. But since he's the only one who made it, he thinks his luck is actually insane. Chuck is still acting like a total show-off with his hands behind his head, but Nim the elf girl is fed up and yanks him by the ear to call out his trashy attitude. Chuck's screaming for her to stop before his ear literally rips off, but she just tells him that if he's not going to listen, he doesn't even need ears. First up is Chuck, a silver rank thief who's looking totally ticked off right now, but right next to him is Nim, a silver rank archer who's way more chill and relaxed than her teammate. Then we've got Ritz, a silver rank swordsman who looks like he's totally done with life. Well, then you've got Kurtz, their silver rank mage, who's super chill and actually seems way friendlier than your average veteran. Kurtz catches Lauren staring and asks if this is seriously the first time he's ever seen a real elf. He just laughs it off, saying it's a normal reaction since Nim is such a total babe. but she immediately threatens to poke his eyes out if he doesn't shut his mouth. The old man jokes that he's basically 1 foot in the grave, but admits going blind would be a total drag. So he finally stops, while Chuck complains about them being bad examples for the rookies. Ritz snaps everyone back to focus, saying he gets the deal, but they're in the middle of a job and can't waste time walking Lauren and Lapis back to the exit. Nim jumps in and asks if they've heard any rumors about the ruins being explored near Ein Village lately. Chuck's just over there grumbling, wishing they'd picked literally any other job but this one. Lauren takes a second to wrap his head around it all, looks at the crew, and asks if they're seriously in this mess. Chuck jumps in, looking super annoyed, asking if they're literally standing inside those new ruins right now. He explains that hitting these ruins is a massive gamble, but the loot is insane, so they took the job for some quick cash right before a rival team showed up to challenge them. Kurtz looks totally wiped out as he explains they're in a massive race to see who can investigate better, and since the winner takes all the cash, they've been rushing like crazy. Lauren hears them out and says he totally gets it, promising he won't get in the way of their work, so he just asks them where the exit is and tells the veterans that he and Lapis will handle the rest on their own. Ritz suddenly looks like he's about to drop some seriously bad news, and as he starts talking about that exit, Lauren is left totally confused until Ritz finally cracks under the pressure and admits that his group is totally lost too, and they have no idea where the exit is. Lauren's just staring at him in total shock while he tells the guy that his situation is honestly a total nightmare. Ritz snaps back instantly, telling Lauren not to get it twisted because it's not like they were slacking on the map or just forgot the way back. Lapis looks down, feeling super guilty because she's worried her face totally gave away how she felt about that bad news. Ritz catches the weird energy, and as he and Lauren lock eyes, the whole room feels the massive awkwardness building up until Lauren finally speaks up and asks Lapis if he's just being a jerk or if his face is showing how much trouble they're actually in. Ritz is totally losing it, admitting that after the huge mess they made, he can't even bring himself to look his teammates in the eye. Lauren just brushes off the awkwardness and asks Ritz why a bunch of pros like them ended up getting lost. Ritz facepalms and sighs, explaining that they didn't just wander off, they actually fell straight through a hidden pit trap. He looks totally ticked off thinking about the fall and blames the whole thing on Chuck for failing to see the trap in time. Ritz says they got super lucky. There weren't any spikes or poison at the bottom, but they fell a whole floor and now they're totally stuck because it's way too high to. Now the whole squad is totally trapped, and he points out that if even one person stayed up top, they'd be safe. But they all dove in together while Chuck just sits there groaning. Nim is super annoyed and tells Chuck she's never going to forget him landing on her, but Chuck just snaps back that hitting her felt just as hard as the floor anyway. Nim looks straight up terrifying as she stares Chuck down, telling him to say his last words right now because his time is officially up. She starts pulling her sword out, shouting that Chuck is straight up getting the death penalty for messing up. Chuck completely flips out and screams that he's telling the truth, looking totally petrified as Nim pulls out her sword, but Ritz totally ignores the drama behind him and keeps talking to Lauren, telling him that this is just how things went down. He admits they're in a total mess and says even if he showed them the exit right now, it wouldn't actually change a thing. Ritz is looking super stressed because his team got trashed in the fall, and since they're fresh out of potions and people are still hurt, he had to lock the floor down. He looks Lauren right in the eye and tells her he's actually got a huge favor to ask them. Lapis peeks over Lauren's shoulder and jumps in, telling Ritz she's got just enough magic left for one last healing spell if he needs it. Ritz is totally frozen in shock, and he's so confused he can't even find the words, just making a weird noise while staring right at them. Lapis keeps bragging that her magic is way better than any potion, and she tells him that if he gives her a minute, she can probably pull off another one. Lapis leans in and whispers to Lauren that Ritz probably just wants her to tag along to pay for all those expensive potions they used. Lauren gets super suspicious and whispers back, asking if the other group is just going to take him out so they can steal her for themselves. AP says she can't walk, so someone has to carry her. But if one of Ritz's guys does it, they'll be way too weak in a fight. If Lauren takes the lead, the squad stays at full power since he can totally handle things solo. She even says it's no big deal if they get dumped later, but Ritz snaps because he heard the whole thing and asks if they really think he's that much of a scumbag. Lapis doesn't waste a second asking if he's legit. And even though Ritz admits he looks like a straight-up villain, he promises he's not actually going to do anything bad. Nim stands over a totally wrecked guy and tells everyone not to stress, but she makes it clear that if these dudes try to ditch Lauren and just take the girl, she's going to end them right on the spot. Ritz gets right back to business, telling them he'll only help if Lapis uses her magic whenever he gives the word. In exchange, he's letting them tag along with his squad until they finally find a way out of these ruins. Lapis doesn't even hesitate and tells him she's totally down for the plan. Ritz flashes a cocky grin, saying the deal is officially sealed and he's hyped to work with them until they finally make it out of these ruins. Lauren's got Lapis on his back as the whole crew finally hits the road. Lauren just gives a quick nod, showing he's totally down with how things are playing out. Ritz shouts to the whole crew that it's time to get back to business and keep pushing through the ruins. Lauren lets out a huge sigh, just praying they can finish the trip without any more crazy drama going down. Watching the group head off, he's got a really bad feeling about their chances, since it's such a massive journey ahead. As they're walking through the super quiet hallway, Lapis suddenly calls out his name to get him to look over. She leans over his shoulder and asks how that burn on his arm is holding up after their crazy fight. Lauren tells her to chill out and acts like the whole thing is basically no big deal. He says Ritz's crew hooked him up with meds and bandages. But Lapis still tells him to speak up if the pain gets way too crazy. Lapis whispers that she's actually got 2 divine arts left, and she's been saving one of them just for Lauren. Lauren realized she totally played the other group by lying about being on her last shot just to keep a secret weapon ready. But he feels like lying during a deal is super sketchy, but he's still going through with it. He knows he's totally out of options, so until they find an escape, he's stuck with this silver rank squad, which means now they're basically stuck together until this whole mission is over. As they keep walking, Ritz speaks up and says this place is giving off some seriously bad vibes. He says that in a place this ancient and hidden, you'd usually be tripping over golems and zombies. But get this, so far, the only things they're finding are enemies that have already been wiped out. He thinks it's super sketchy that none of the usual dungeon guards are popping up to stop them, so Lauren basically asks why they aren't hyped that things are finally going easy for once. Ritz shuts Lauren down and tells her guardians definitely show up in places like this, looking totally stressed out. Lauren points out that even though they're in the right spot, it's super weird that the only things they've actually run into are goblins. Lapis jumps in and asks if the goblins came from outside, wondering if there are more cracks in the walls just like the one they fell through. Ritz shuts that down, saying the whole place was totally sealed off until just a few days ago. He says the guy who found this place needed a whole squad of mages just to crack the seal, so the original guardian is probably still trapped inside. As they head deeper, he points out something super weird. There isn't a single sign of any other monsters besides the goblins they already found. Oikert thinks the guardians might have just died of old age or lost a fight to the goblins, but he's confused why there aren't any bodies or bones left behind. The old mage says things would be way easier if they were only fighting ghosts or spirits that don't leave bodies behind. If that's the case, this isn't just some random ruin, and he starts wondering why this place was even built in the first place. Lauren just stares ahead, realizing this job is turning into way more of a mess than a simple ruin hunt. Ritz tells everyone to stop stressing over the history of these ruins for now because the real struggle right now is just finding a way to reach those upper floors. Lauren freezes out of nowhere and goes straight for his sword. He warns the squad that he can hear another pack of goblins waiting right up ahead. He tells Lapis to hop off his back for a sec so he can get into the fight, but she just taps his shoulder and tells him she's good, since she's not ready to hop down just yet. Ritz tells Lauren to just cover their backs while the others take the front, and she's totally down for it. Ritz counts only 7 enemies and figures this fight is going to be a total piece of cake. Kurz asks if they need a magic boost, but Chuck tells him to chill, because they're going to wrap this up in a heartbeat. Right as the goblins come charging out of the shadows screaming and ready to throw down, Ritz jumps in and tanks the hit with his shield, stopping that goblin dead in its tracks. Chuck charges in like a total blur, slicing through 2 of them before they even realize what's happening. The rest of the pack gets wiped out instantly, and Nim keeps her bow ready after sniping the last runner. Chuck wipes the sweat off his head and catches his breath, looking totally satisfied with how easy that whole thing was. Lauren hangs back with Lapis and tells the squad their teamwork was seriously on another level. Chuck just smirks at the praise and tells him it wasn't even a big deal. Kurtz jumps in to remind Lauren that they're silver rank adventurers for a reason. Lauren just gives a little smirk and says he's sorry for being such a jerk again. Deep down, he's realizing that the power gap between these ranks is absolutely insane. Ritz starts slicing into one of the dead goblins and calls Lauren over to check out what he found. Ritz shows off the goblin ears and tells Lauren's squad that since they were out hunting, these still count even if they didn't clear the whole nest. They can still use these as proof to collect a reward for every single goblin they wiped out. Lauren asks if he's for real, thinking that for a high-ranked team like theirs, this loot is basically trash that's not even worth carrying. Nim points out how crazy it is for a greedy guy like Ritz to actually give up money. while Chuck jokes about bragging to all the other guys. Ritz totally snaps and tells them to shut up, claiming he's finally just looking out for his juniors for once. Chuck keeps the jokes flying, laughing that it's probably going to rain spears tomorrow since Ritz is actually being nice for once. Lapis thinks they should just grab them since the offer is right there, and Lauren totally agrees. Lauren grabs the bag and it's totally stuffed, way heavier than he thought it'd be. Looking at that mountain of loot, he starts feeling kind of weird about taking so much from them. It gets even worse when he sees the blood soaking through the cloth, and that nasty smell starts hitting him. Ritz looks down at the dead monster and groans that these goblins just never stop coming as they finish the job. He holds out the bag of trophies and tells Lauren to grab it. Ritz says thanks and says that's plenty for now, but Lauren is standing there sweating, wondering how the heck everyone else is just ignoring that gross smell. Out of nowhere, he hears some super heavy breathing right behind his head. He turns around and finds Lapis leaning all over him, gasping for air like she's totally out of it. She's quick to tell him she's not hyped at all. It's just that the smell is so gross she literally can't breathe through her nose anymore. Lauren just looks away and tells her he totally gets it, so she doesn't have to explain a thing. But then, Nim stops everyone dead in their tracks, and Saw warns them to hold up because the whole vibe of the place just totally shifted. One line out rule. Input. She catches a scent in the air and points out that it's different now. It's definitely not the smell of goblin. The elf's expression turns dead serious as she realizes that smell in the air is actually fresh blood. Chuck looks all over the place and says he doesn't see anything like what Nim was talking about. He figures that whatever she's smelling is definitely waiting for them just a little further down the path. Lapis peeks over Lauren's shoulder, sounding totally lost as she asks if there's even a difference, since she always thought all blood just smelled like rust, but Ritz shuts everyone up and tells the group that Nim's senses are way sharper than anyone else's there. Nim smacks Chuck for his comment, and he yelps that her body is seriously just as sharp as her nose. This just makes Ritz snap and tell him to quit acting like such a pathetic loser. Chuck tries to laugh it off, telling everyone they're way too stressed and need to chill before they blow the whole thing, but moving on. The squad decides to push forward, staying on high alert as they head even deeper inside. Ritz looks back at the pair and asks if the priestess is still having a hard time moving. She leaves Lapis to apologize, saying she just needs a little more time to finally get her act together. Lauren just stands there for a second, looking totally locked in as she tries to process everything. Chuck looks at Lapis and tells her he doesn't know her story, but she should probably head back to the church since she looks totally dead on her feet. Lauren jumps in and tells him it's her call to make, and he's got no right to decide for her. Chuck suddenly stops dead and tells everyone they seriously need to look at what's right in front of them. They look forward and the whole path ahead is just a total disaster. Nim drops down and finds some leather armor, but the whole thing is totally soaked in blood. Ritz looks at the mess and notices the blood is still bright red, which means whatever went down here just happened. Kurtz rubs his beard, realizing another group must have landed on this floor with them, and then Kurtz. He's starting to wonder which member of that rival squad was actually the one wearing the armor they found. Nim just sighs, saying Ritz and Chuck are being way too reckless with the whole situation. Nim looks totally over it and says Kurtz has finally lost his mind, but the old man screams back that he's still sharp as ever. Nim tunes out all the arguing and asks Lauren to give her the real truth. Lauren asks if she really wants his take instead of her own squad's, but Nim tells him to let those guys do their thing, while she finds out what he thinks happened to the person who wore that. Lauren stares at the bloody mess and says with that much blood everywhere, the owner is definitely a goner. He keeps going, saying it's pretty obvious they got finished off right there on the floor. Nim stops to think and realizes that if the armor belongs to the other team, their thief was the one wearing it, which means he's the guy who totally disappeared. Lapis suddenly blurts out the word woman, totally catching Lauren off guard. She says these ruins are only supposed to have goblins, but she can't stop wondering why a woman was involved. Nim stares Lauren down and demands to know exactly what he thinks about that. Lapis blurts out that this whole situation feels super sketchy. Lapis drops a major bombshell, pointing out that the owner of that bloody armor was definitely a woman, which makes things get really serious. The whole room goes dead silent when she drops the bomb that a goblin was the one who killed her, and Lauren just stares at her in total shock. She says that if their theories are actually legit, then this whole situation is completely messed up. It makes zero sense because a regular goblin would never act like this. Nim jumps in with a super serious look, admitting she's also starting to get a really bad vibe about that same thing. Lapis thinks there's something else lurking deep inside these ruins. Lauren's not buying it at all and demands to know exactly what she means by that. Lapis reminds them that the mission brief said these ruins were only supposed to be packed with goblins. The scary part is that these goblins are famous for keeping women alive instead of killing them right away. It's because those monsters have some seriously gross ways of using them instead of just finishing them off. Lapis points out the big problem. Even though a girl was inside that armor, they still killed her, right where she stood. Lapis thinks this is super weird if they're actually up against goblins. Neuron stays silent while Lapis explains that these monsters love to play with their food, dragging people back to their nest alive for some sick fun. Lauren lets out a sigh, realizing that if she's right about how these things act, things are about to get crazy. So you just know there's something way scarier than a goblin lurking deep inside these ruins. Nim looks over at Lauren and asks if he remembers the way back to that crack in the wall where they first met. Lauren tells her it was pretty much just a straight shot the whole way through. Nim takes a second to let that sink in before finally nodding, because she totally gets it now. He turns to Ritz and tells him something feels totally wrong, so they need to bail and come up with a better plan. Ritz starts looking super stressed and tells everyone they need to hold on for a sec. Ritz admits things feel sketchy, but says they can't just assume those bones belong to the missing crew, and they'll need a way better excuse than a bad vibe to actually call it quits. Let's be real. Heading back to town just because of some bloody armor would make them look like total amateurs. Chuck holds up a metal dog tag and explains they need to find one of these to prove the people they're looking for are actually dead. Ritz is all in and tells everyone to stay sharp, because if they chicken out now without any proof, their reputation is toast and nobody will ever hire them again. He makes it clear that if they actually find those ID tags Chuck mentioned, they'll finally have a serious talk about leaving. Nim listens to his reasoning and just tells him she's totally down for the plan. Ritz looks ahead and warns the squad that since they're heading deeper into the ruins, they better be ready for a fight. Just as the group is about to head out, Lapis taps Lauren's arm and softly calls his name. Lauren looks down and asks if she's finally feeling okay after that crazy shock. Lapis gives him a quick nod, saying she's all good now and thanking him for having her back. Ritz checks back in to see if Lapis has finally stopped shaking and is ready to get moving on her own, and she tells him she's totally fine, admitting that even though Lawrence's back was super comfy, she didn't want to keep being a burden. That catches Chuck's eye, and he smirks as he asks if they're actually a couple. Lauren tries to shut that down instantly, but Lapis just grins and tells Chuck it's still a work in progress. Chuck starts cracking up and tells Lauren he's hyped he landed such a top-tier girl, but then Nim just decks him out of nowhere. He towers over him with a terrifying look, asking if he's trying to lure every single monster in the ruins right to them. She warns him to shut his mouth, or she'll be the one to take him out before a monster even gets the chance. Ritz brushes off the drama and tells Lauren that since his hands are free, he's finally ready to jump into the fight. He's in charge of watching the back, and Lapis pipes up to say she's already been assigned to help him. Lauren keeps her guard up while Lapis scans the area, finally acting like her usual self again. Lapis is basically glowing as he tells Lauren that he almost never gets to experience stuff like this. She points out they're basically tagging along on a high-level hunt for ancient ruins, which is way above what a low-level copper rank usually gets to do. Lauren is totally freaking out, shouting her name and asking if she even realizes how much danger they're actually in. Lapis doesn't even take him seriously, leaning in with a total fake pout and telling him he's being way too scary. That totally fails because Lauren calls her out for being way too obvious with her fake acting. She ends up hanging onto his arm anyway, and even though he tells her to back off, she just lets out this super annoyed whine, so Lauren just watches the rest of the group walk off, while I'm over here sweating and praying that nobody else caught them acting so weird. He tells her that even if she's hyped for the ruins, she seriously needs to dial it back and stay cool. Lapis just lets out a big sigh and admits she's basically got no other choice. She keeps checking out the area as they walk, finally asking the group what the big plan is and where they're even going. Ritz says they're basically just exploring the ruins while keeping an eye on the other team, but honestly, he's not even sure which job is more important right now. Lapis isn't alone while she tries to wrap her head around all this new info. She figures since the whole squad already fell for it once, heading straight back to that pitfall trap is actually their best bet. Ritz isn't buying it for a second, so he stares her down and demands one good reason why they'd even try that. Lapis points out that the pitfall was a total trap meant to catch anyone trying to sneak in. Since it's not meant to kill them right away, she figures this whole floor was built just to deal with anyone who falls in. Ritz finally puts it all together and realizes the builders left these monsters here on purpose just to finish off anyone who falls down. He still can't figure out why anyone would waste their time making a system that's such a massive headache. Lapis stays totally chill, telling him that even if she doesn't know the history here, most civilizations throughout time basically think the exact same way. He's basically saying that since nobody cares about intruders, the whole place was built to be a total nightmare for them. Lapis gets this super serious look, and you just know this place is being used for something totally different. The squad looks totally wiped out, but she tells them to just shake off the bad vibes, since there's clearly nothing worth finding on this floor anyway. She tells them straight up that if they actually want to find those ruins, wandering around down here is just a total waste of time. Ritz asks why they're heading back to where they fell, so Lapis explains there's got to be a secret path for repairs or clearing out the bodies. Lauren just watches, totally sure that an escape is right around the corner, which makes Ritz finally agrees it's their best move, even though Chuck starts whining that they didn't see a single door when they first landed. Lapis keeps it real and says the builders aren't going to leave an easy exit for intruders, so it's definitely hidden somewhere secret. Chuck keeps swearing that he totally would have spotted anything if it was actually there. The others just glare at him like they aren't buying it, and he's so stuck he can't even think of a comeback. Ritz finally makes the call, telling the whole crew they're heading back to the fall site to kick off the real search. Kurtz pulls out the map he's been making and checks his notes to see what he's got so far. He points right at a dead-end wall, making it clear that way is definitely the wrong direction. The crew keeps heading down the cramped stone hallway, and Kurt's telling them to check the next spot right as they finally make it to the spot, and Lauren tells everyone they're right back where they fell. Everyone freezes to look around this massive room, where the ceiling is way higher than the rest of the dungeon, and someone asks if that lid is actually the trapdoor they fell through, and honestly, it totally looks like it. Lauren looks all over the walls and finds absolutely nothing. So she asks Lapis if she's 100% sure there's actually a way up. Chuck starts yelling and demands to know if he's right, looking totally ticked off that anyone would even doubt his skills. He starts throwing a fit, bragging that a silver-rank thief like him would have totally spotted that door, while Lap just watches him. Lapis just gives him a look and says if there was a secret path, he definitely would have spotted it by now. Lapis walks up to a totally normal-looking part of the wall and presses her hand right against it. Lauren's totally baffled and asks what she's even doing, since her random movements make zero sense to him. She says the magic in the walls makes it super hard to see, but she still managed to find a secret switch. Suddenly, a massive hatch in the ceiling creaks wide open, and the whole squad is left staring up in total shock. Chuck gets ticked off and asks why the old man missed it, but Kurtz just calls him an idiot and says a thief like him should have been the one to spot the trap. Lauren just watches them argue and admits he has no clue what's going on. Nim looks up at the opening and spots a ladder just waiting for them. Someone speaks up, saying that the whole thing was honestly way too easy. Lapis finally makes the call and tells the whole squad it's time to head up to the next floor. Chuck looks up at the exit and asks the squad if the coast is clear before they start the climb. Chuck eyes the ladder, decides it's solid enough to hold, and makes the call to be the first one to climb up. Nim thinks it's a genius move because if things go south at the top, Chuck is the only one who can actually survive the jump back down. She tells him to quit stalling and just get it over with, giving him a quick cheer while he starts wobbling his way up the wall. Lauren watched the whole thing go down and just had to ask if that sounded a little weird. He looks totally wiped out and admits that this whole mess is just a massive waste of his time. Lapis just grins and reminds Knight that if the other team found that secret path first, they wouldn't even be together right now. Chuck finally reaches the top of the ladder, muttering that the whole thing was probably just a total fluke. He leans over the ledge and yells that it's safe, telling the rest of the squad to start heading up one by one. When everyone starts asking who's next, Lapis is all smiles and suggests that she and Lauren should just wait to go last. She starts humming because she's so hyped for the mission, but Lauren calls her out for being way too happy in a place this creepy. Lauren points out that even if they finish this climb, the other group is probably just going to tell them to get lost and go home. Ritz and his squad totally know the way home once they get back to the floor where everyone fell. Lapis completely freezes up because she's totally caught off guard, while Lauren just thinks she's being a little slow. She admitted she got way too hyped about the ruins and totally blanked on the fact that getting back up was the main goal. Since the floor is totally empty, Lauren just stares off, thinking about how this place is way too dangerous. He's totally over this place and just wants to bail, so let's keep it moving. Lauren asks Lapis if they have any other ways to help the squad, but Lapis admits it's really hard to find anything useful besides her divine arts. She explains that using magic out of nowhere would look way too sus, so she offers to use her local knowledge to help them out instead. She tells him that if she can just figure out what these ruins are, she'll finally be able to crack the map for them. Lauren thinks it's actually pretty sick, even though he's low-key worried about her showing up again. Lapis asks Lauren if he's ever noticed how every single adventurer guild is basically a copy-paste of the same building. She says they do this so the staff can get to work instantly, even if they're sent to a totally different city. She smirks and points out that the same exact logic applies to these ancient ruins they're exploring. She says the ancient kingdom folks were actually super practical, so buildings with the same job always look exactly the same. Lauren asks if there are ever any exceptions to that rule, and Lapis says yeah, mostly because every era has its own bunch of weirdos who, the builders here were totally out of their minds, and now the squad is stuck climbing straight up these wild ruins. Ritz finally hits the top and gasps that they're safe, but that relief gets snatched away instantly because he looks over the edge and instantly freezes, his voice totally failing him when he sees what's waiting down there. He starts screaming at everyone to get back down the ladder, because things just got way more dangerous. And just like that, a massive swarm of goblins bursts out of the shadows, screaming about an ambush. The hallway is totally packed with goblins, and a massive wave of them is just flooding the ruins, and as the swarm hunts them down, Ritz screams, "What even is that?" Because he can't believe how massive the swarm actually is. He's booking it, yelling about how a whole army of monsters could have been hiding in these ruins the entire time. Narayan yells back that she has no clue where they came from, since they just spawned out of nowhere, and she is definitely not dying to some lame goblins. Ritz tells everyone to shut their mouths and just focus on sprinting as fast as they can. Lauren just hangs his head, wondering how he got stuck in the same mess again, especially with these crazy high numbers. He knows that if they make one wrong turn or get trapped in a corner, they're going to be totally surrounded in seconds. The second that goes down, they're basically toast as they sprint through the pitch black. Lapis is starting to sound super nervous, admitting that things are looking really bad for them right now because Kurtz and Naren are finally hitting a wall, gasping for breath and losing the strength to even keep moving. Ritz screams at Kurtz and Lapis to keep their legs moving, telling them they've just got to hold on somehow. He screams a warning that if anyone stops running now, they're going to die right where they stand. Lauren looks over and sees the whole squad is totally wiped out and hitting their absolute limit. He notices Lapis is really struggling because her mana is still drained, and she just can't keep this up anymore. Lopus knows she's just slowing everyone down, so she tells Lauren to ditch her and save herself, but she lets out a shocked yelp when Lauren suddenly lunges in and snatches her up anyway. Ritz asks if he's really going to be okay carrying her, but Lauren just says he's totally used to doing stuff like this. He flashes back to his mercenary days, when dragging his teammates through total chaos was just another day on the job. He's running on zero sleep and finally has to admit that things are getting way too intense. Kurtz feels like a total drag and says sorry to Lauren, promising he'll definitely make it up to him later. Lapis looks up from Lauren's shoulder and starts apologizing for being such a huge drag. She's worried about being a pain again, but Lauren tells her it's totally fine since they aren't even using their legs anyway. He knows they got to start using their brains, because if they keep this up, they're just going to get exhausted and end up caught. Lapis whips her head around and shouts for Kurtz to see if he can make a move. She asks him to rain down fireballs to clear the path, but Kurtz tells her that against a crowd this massive, that's not going to do much. And even if he throws up an earth wall to block the path, it won't hold them back for long. It won't take long before Lapis asks about dropping a firestorm, and Kurt thinks he might actually be able to pull it off. He could maybe fire twice if he really pushed it, but Lapis knew instantly that 2 shots just weren't going to be enough. She actually saves their lives and tells Kurtz he's got insane skills, but Lauren snaps and tells them to stop talking. He's ignoring the distractions and trying to lock in as he scrambles for a better plan before their time runs out. Ritz is totally losing it, screaming that they're all going to be monster snacks, while Lapis adds that she and Nim will probably be kept alive just to breed more goblins. Kurt says that's a real possibility since the girls weren't eaten like the guys were, which only makes the vibe gets even worse when Chuck asks what they're even supposed to do, and Lauren totally snaps, telling everyone to finally take things seriously. Nim is sweating bullets and totally freaking out because she knows they're in a massive mess right now. She looks at the crew and tells them she's hit her limit, but she gets cut off before she can even finish her sentence. Ritz steps up and tells her that if she can't run another step, he'll just carry her on his back, so they've got to keep moving. So he's going to buy them every second he can, even if it means he's the one getting held back. Neem hangs her head and apologizes for being a total burden, but Ritz notices she's being way quieter than usual. Lauren is totally exhausted, staring at the ground and thinking there's no way an emergency exit actually exists on a floor like this. They're totally out of moves and their bodies are done, so it's hard to tell if they've lost their touch or if their brains are just shutting down from being so exhausted. Lauren stares down the dark hallway and realizes they're dead meat if they just keep running, so he decides to bet everything on one crazy last-ditch plan. He tells the squad that doing literally anything is better than just sitting around waiting to die. And while he's got an idea, he's not even sure it counts as a real plan. Lauren looks over at the squad and asks Ritz if he seriously remembers the way they took to get into this mess. Ritz looks back and admits he's totally clueless, but he's sure Chuck has the whole path memorized. Lauren points up at the ceiling and asks if they can get back to that hole where the goblins were falling from earlier. Chuck is totally freaking out, explaining that they can't turn back yet, and even though some paths cross over, he thinks it's pointless and asks what they're even supposed to do once they get there. Lauren figures that since a massive wave of goblins already flooded out of that hole, the floor above is probably totally empty for now. He explains that while the goblins can jump down in a massive swarm, they'll need ladders to climb back up, which totally ruins their plan to move as a big group. This keeps them from getting swarmed, but Chuck's not convinced and warns Lauren that these goblins are way smarter than they look. Chuck warns that the monsters aren't just going to stand there and watch them climb, because if they get jumped on that ladder, it's game over. Lauren looks over at Kurtz and asks if they can use some magic to buy themselves a little more time. Kurtz thinks fast and decides to torch the front line with a firestorm while blocking everyone else with a massive earth wall. The old mage says he's got it under control, but Ritz is still freaking out because those goblins are charging way too hard for a basic wall to stop. Lauren shouts that they just need to reach the top floor before the wall shatters, and if they don't make it, it's all on him. He finishes by telling the squad he's staying behind to hold the line and watch their backs alone. Ritz looks at him like he's totally lost it and asks if he's for real, because there's no way one person can take on that many monsters alone. Lauren says he's not fighting the whole swarm at once. He's just going to pick off whatever actually makes it past that wall of fire. He gives Ritz a cocky grin and tells him to just keep climbing for his life so they never have to find out. Ritz finally gives in and tells Chuck to lead them back to that hole, and Chuck's totally down for it. He takes off at a full sprint, yelling for everyone to stay right on his heel. Ritz tells Kurtz to get his magic ready, and the old mage says he's all over it. Ritz goes over the plan, telling Chuck he's got to get up there first to pull the rest of the crew up once they arrive. Ritz stops and looks right at Lauren, reminding him that, since he's the leader, he's the one who has to stay behind and watch their backs. Lauren stands his ground, telling the guy he appreciates the thought, but he's still the only one who can pull this off. Ritz is just like, why are you making such a huge deal out of this? Lauren tells Ritz his armor is way too heavy to climb fast, and the goblins would totally grab his legs before he even made it up. So, he tells them that even though he's a new adventurer, he's actually a pro mercenary who spent his whole life watching people's backs in war. Ritz finally gives in and tells Lauren he's counting on him, even though he totally hates the idea of leaving him behind. Chuck suddenly shouts that they've reached the ladder, noticing those monsters have finally stopped falling from the hole. Ritz steps up and screams for everyone to start climbing the second they hit that ladder. These monsters are moving way faster than anyone thought, and someone lets out a shout as the beasts finally close the gap. Ritz wastes zero time shouting at the old man to unleash his magic right this second. Kurt starts his chant, summoning a massive vortex and a wild storm of red flames right in front of him. He screams to finish the spell, unleashing a massive firestorm that rips through the whole place. He's not done yet, and he just casually tells the guys he's already moving on to the next spell. Lauren and Ritz cover his back while Kurt summons a massive wall of earth to block the path. He slams his staff down to summon a massive earth wall, cutting off the path behind them. With the monsters blocked, the group starts scrambling up the ladder, yelling for everyone to hurry while Lauren watches the old man work and realizes silver rank mages are just built different, finally feeling like they might actually make it out of this alive. Out of nowhere, a massive impact rocks the whole place and everyone just freezes in their tracks. Ritz is totally losing it, screaming about how insane the pressure is and how those things are acting way too weird. Lauren stays locked in and points out that even if that magic was lightning fast, there should still be a massive amount of heat behind that wall. The impact is absolutely massive, and someone shouts that they've never seen goblins with the guts to hunt people down this hard. Lauren yells at them to quit the chatter and just start climbing that ladder as fast as they can. Suddenly, a fist rips through the barrier and clocks a goblin right in the face. Lauren isn't messing around, throwing a massive punch to stop those monsters from squeezing through the gap. Ritz screams up the ladder for everyone to move it, but the old man yells back that he's going as fast as he can. Lauren sees the total chaos and knows there's no running away, so he's just going to have to stay and fight. Up top, Chuck is sweating bullets while scanning the area, just hoping there aren't any more enemies waiting to jump out at them. He reaches down from the ledge and yells for Nim to hurry up so he can pull her up. Chuck finally grabs Nim and yanks her up onto the ledge, letting out a massive sigh of relief. Nim is totally wiped out, doubling over and gasping for air after that crazy close call. She thanks Chuck for the save, but he totally brushes her off and asks if the priestess is their next target. Suddenly, a dude from below screams at them to quit yapping and get moving. Looking into that dark tunnel, they realize this level is a total disaster too. Lauren is still down there holding the line, screaming at the group to see if they're finally finished. Lapis is fighting her way up the ladder, yelling back that she's almost at the top. Nim's face goes totally white as she points into the distance, screaming at Chuck to look at what's heading their way. Chuck grits his teeth and totally loses it, yelling about how even more of those things are still popping up. So, Lapis is told to back up Ritz while the old man is asked if he can still use magic, and he says he's only got one shot left. Lauren plants his feet at the mouth of the dark tunnel, shouting back that he'll hold off the monsters until Ritz and the crew finish their climb. He's starting to feel the pressure because the enemies just won't stop coming, and he's struggling to stay on his feet while trying not to slip on all the blood. He takes a second to catch his breath, but then he realizes something about this is totally wrong. It finally hits him that there should be way more bodies on the floor than what he's actually looking at. He knows for a fact he's taken out way more goblins than the few bodies he sees lying around him right now. He remembers them all crashing down from the ceiling in a giant heap, getting totally smashed or trampled under their own weight. So there should be a massive pile of dead monsters stacked up right in front of him. The crazy thing is, when he first walked in here, the floor was totally clean, and there wasn't a single body in sight. Lawrence is just standing there trying to make sense of it all when he looks up and sees those dead monsters are actually moving and dragging themselves right back up. Lawrence spots a goblin lurking in the shadows and wonders what the heck that thing is even up to. He realizes right then that they're actually rounding up all those dead goblin bodies. He's just standing there sweating bullets, trying to wrap his head around why they'd even want a massive pile of dead bodies. He mutters a curse and yells for Chuck to see what's going on, when all of a sudden, Lapis yells his name from the top of the ladder to get him to look up. Lauren looks up and asks if the rest of the squad actually made it to the top. Lapis says they pulled it off, but she warns him that the top floor is already totally swarming with goblins. He warns him that there's a massive crowd of those things just waiting up there. She's totally losing it and says some seriously creepy ones just showed up. He explains that while the others are trying to hold them off, the whole situation is falling apart fast. Lapis screams down to Lauren to move it because they're about to be totally surrounded. Lauren looks totally over it as he realizes he has to deal with even more of these goblins. He's wondering why everyone here is so obsessed with these monsters, but he knows he's got to hit that top floor right now. He grabs his gear and gets ready to bolt. A massive explosion rips through the madness, giving him the perfect chance to make his move. Lauren spots his opening and starts hauling it toward the ladder. He's racing up the ladder, clutching his massive sword tight the whole way. The second he hits the top, Lapis is right there asking what's going on down below. She tells him Chuck's already out with an injury, and even though Ritz is still holding the line, she suddenly stops talking and screams that Nim is in big trouble. Lauren looks up to see a giant dark monster looming over him and asks what that creepy black thing even is. Nim looks up in total shock, realizing this beast isn't moving even a single inch. Lapis screams for it to stop right when it looks like everything is over, but Lauren rushes in and blasts the goblin right in the face with a massive kick. He looks back thinking any normal goblin would have had its head ripped straight off by that hit. He realizes this guy is built different and knows he's got to go all out. He mumbles that this has to be a joke because the monster is somehow still standing. Nim tries to fight back from the ground, but the monster's skin is way too tough to even scratch. Boom! A hit lands and the goblin stumbles back, grabbing its face in total pain. Lapis yells for Nim as the crew finally realizes that even if its skin is hard as rock, those eyes are a total weak spot. Lauren locks in with total focus, figuring that if one hit doesn't do the trick, he'll just have to keep swinging until it does. He's just going to keep smashing that thing until it finally stays down, and he's going in swinging with everything he's got. He stays low and keeps his speed up, hunting for any opening he can find. Lapis screams his name, warning him that there's still one more monster out there. Ritz gets caught in a brutal grip and screams at the guy to let him go. But the monster crushes him even harder until Ritz feels like his bones are totally going to snap. Lauren asks the old man where all his magic went, and Kurtz shouts back that he's totally out of juice. Kurt says he's totally tapped out and can't even use basic magic for a while since he blew everything on that one guy. Lauren curses their trash luck, knowing deep down that everything is about to go totally sideways. The monsters let out a massive roar that shakes the whole room, and I'm just standing there looking down at the group while they struggle to get up. Ritz says this black monster just appeared out of nowhere, and their arrows were totally useless against it. Chuck got slammed while trying to save Nim, but right then, Lauren showed up to back them up. Nim looks down at her feet and tells Chuck she's sorry, saying this whole mess is all on her. Chuck tells her to shut up and quit being so depressing, since it doesn't fit her vibe, and he just wants her to heal him fast so they can get back to business. Lauren turns to Lapis and asks if she's finally figured out what they're actually up against. Lapis stares into the dark ruins and says she's got a theory, but if she's actually right about this. They end up wandering into some super creepy ruins, and Lauren just repeats the words, wondering what could actually be so bad about this place. Ritz looks totally wiped out, but Lapis tells him she's got one more thing she needs to check. Ritz asks if they should just follow her lead, and Lapis tells him they've got zero other options. She thinks for a second and explains that while they're here to investigate, the real problem is that if they don't put this place back to sleep ASAP, things are going to get way worse. Ritz shouts that they need to bail right now, and Lapis warns the squad that if they keep standing around, the next attack is going to hit them any second. Ritz is totally freaking out, saying they're basically toast if that black goblin comes back for round 2. Lapis leans in and asks Chuck if he wants her to bust out some divine arts to bail him out, but Chuck tells her he's all good now that the meds are finally kicking in, even if he's still feeling a bit dizzy from that hit to the head. Lapis isn't buying it and warns him that head injuries are serious business, but Chuck just smiles and thanks her for the advice. He says he'll follow her lead if they actually make it out alive, but Ritz is skeptical and asks if he can even stand up. Chuck just tells him to quit with the dumb questions because he's totally got this handled. He looks at Nim and says he'll jump into action the second she gives the word, but she's still super worried and tells him not to push himself too hard. Chuck reaches out and tells her it's all good, promising he's not nearly as beat up as he looks. He claims he only blacked out for a second because that monster landed one lucky hit. He tells her to stop stressing because he's definitely going to be moving just fine when the moment hits. Kurds is looking totally wrecked and admits he's completely out of mana, which basically makes him dead weight for the rest of the fight. Chuck just gives him a look and tells the old guy to chill out, since nobody's actually mad at him for running out of juice. Ritz jumps in and says they'd be totally cooked if Kurtz hadn't taken down that monster, so they need to get moving right now. Lauren takes the lead and glides through the ruins so smoothly it's like he's already got the whole place memorized. While they walk, Lauren wonders what those monsters actually were since their bodies were way too tough. So he asks Lapis if she thinks they were some kind of high-level goblins. Lapis thinks it might be a hobgoblin, but she figures it's probably just a regular goblin that grew way bigger than the rest. Lauren's not buying it for a second, so he asks her what else it could even be, since just getting huge doesn't explain why it looked like that. Lapis looks him in the eye and asks if he noticed anything else sketchy while they were fighting. Lauren points out that the goblins were actually gathering their dead, and he's totally sure it wasn't just because they were hungry. He points out there are way too many of them and the vibe is totally off, so Lapis agrees these goblins are definitely not normal. Lapis says these ruins are probably just crawling with goblins, which totally catches Lauren off guard as he asks her what she means. As they keep walking, Lapis looks over and asks if he's ever heard of alchemy, or how people actually make medicine. Lauren says he knows those jobs and has seen people doing them, but he doesn't actually have any friends in that field. Lapis says it's totally fine, but then she suddenly starts asking about the animals those researchers are using for their experiments. Lauren suddenly realizes she's talking about lab mice and how they're used to test out new meds. Lapis asks why they use mice for this stuff, but Lauren just points a finger and asks if she really expects a mercenary to know random facts like that. Lapis gives a little smirk and says it's just some random facts, but she starts breaking it down anyway. She explains that mice are the top choice for experiments because they breed super fast. Plus, they grow up way faster than normal animals and can pop out a ton of babies in no time. Lauren's finally connecting the dots, and as he thinks about how fast they grow and breed, the whole picture is finally coming together. Lauren stares blankly as he tries to connect the dots, while Lapis asks if he knows any other monster that fits that description. It finally clicks, and he looks totally freaked out as he asks if she's actually talking about goblins. Lapis flashes a huge grin and tells him he's spot on, totally hyped that he's finally keeping up with her. She's not done yet, and says that if her theory about these monsters is actually right, then... So this whole place is actually a massive old lab built just to study and experiment on goblins. She points out they're super easy to keep alive and basically the cheapest way to get the job done. She says that since they look like people but nobody actually cares about them, scientists can do whatever experiments they want without feeling bad about it. Olapus asks if there's anyone better to test on, then instantly realizes there's totally no one else. She looks back and tells him she's positive this whole place was built just to use goblins for some secret research. Lauren just follows behind her looking totally clueless, repeating research and cheap like he's never heard those words in his life. Lapis keeps the conversation going as they walk, explaining that goblins are super easy to keep since they'll eat literally anything, even leftovers or old rotting corpses. She points out that according to the old records, those ancient cities used to treat them like a massive dump for all their random trash. She's super hyped to show that the trash dropped by 80% because those goblins are total cleaning machines. Lauren looks totally grossed out and asks if she seriously thinks economical is the right way to put it. Lapis gets serious and explains that to the ancient kingdom, goblins weren't even seen as living things. They were basically just dust. Because they multiply so fast, Yushi figures the scientists bred them on purpose to create all these freaky new versions. Lauren stops dead in his tracks, wondering if these other types she's talking about are anything like the monster they just scrapped with. Lapis turns back with a grin and says that because of what this place used to be, finding stuff like this is actually pretty common. There are even nasty goblin nests hidden in corners just like this, and she starts to say there are a few around. But then she suddenly freezes when suddenly goblins crawl out of the shadows and surround them, ready to strike. Lapis keeps trekking through the darkness, warning that things are about to get way worse because this place wasn't just made for breeding and Lauren. Lauren's losing it over how chill she's being, asking if she's really going to act this casual, but she just says that's her vibe, and gets right back to the point. Even though they're standing in a literal breeding ground, she realizes they weren't just making clones, but were actually tweaking and buffing the monsters to make them way stronger as they went. Ritz shouts from the back, asking what that even means, so Lapis explains that this research keeps them as goblins, but gives them a massive power boost. She asked if they noticed anything weird about that massive crowd chasing them, because even with so many enemies, there wasn't a single high-level variant since the ones made here are rigged to never. It totally makes sense they stuck to the basic models, because having hobgoblins or goblin mages pop up would just be a massive waste of time for their experiments. Ritz is still pretty sketched out and asks if it's cool for them to get that massive, but Lauren isn't sweating it, saying that no matter how big they grow, a goblin is still just a goblin. But then it hits him. Did that goblin actually sneak out of the nest through a crack, especially since there was a magician waiting right outside? Lapis thinks for a second and realizes those genetic upgrades probably only work while they're stuck inside the ruins. She's totally sure that breaking out into the real world is exactly what let them finally start evolving. Lapis keeps the explanation going, telling the squad that no matter how you look at it, this place is definitely some kind of experimental lab. She figures these monsters were just hibernating for ages until someone finally showed up and flipped the power back on. It's hard to tell if they actually broke a seal or if just walking through the front door set the whole system off again. Lauren looks totally locked in and he asks her to explain exactly how bad things are going to get if they don't shut this thing down ASAP. Lapis explains that those massive black goblins are actually super buffed versions of the regular ones, but they were definitely made right here in this lab. But they were acting super weird. So Ritz asks her what the deal is, and Lapis just gives it to them straight. These ruin-born goblins don't even need humans to multiply. Now she's thinking there's a secret part of the ruins where they're just pumping out basic goblins to use as lab rats. Since these modified creeps don't need to reproduce the normal way, they probably just took out every female adventurer they caught. That's exactly why the black goblin is acting so weird, because it still chased Nim down and was totally trying to rip her clothes off for some reason. Lauren is looking super stressed out as Lapis glances over and asks if he's spotted anything yet. She points out that these goblins are hunting girls even though they don't need them to reproduce, meaning they're definitely up to something else. So she's convinced these monsters are actually made of human parts, specifically the missing guys from Ritz's squad. Lauren is totally freaked out, asking if you can even call a monster like that a goblin anymore. Lapis insists it's still a total goblin, arguing that since they don't call human-born ones half-goblins, those human parts don't change what it actually is. That's why she's totally freaking out, because this whole place was built just to upgrade the goblins and make them way more powerful. The scariest part is that this place actually made these monsters as smart as humans, so now they're learning and evolving every second. Lapis brings up those goblins they saw hauling away their dead friends earlier, and Lauren finally starts to catch on, but she spells it out anyway. They're literally recycling those bodies to build new ones. And the lab uses that experience to make every new batch way stronger. And if they let this cycle keep going, there's no telling how insane these things are actually going to get. Lapis warns that a dragon-skinned goblin is scary enough, but one with human smarts and the skills to use them is a total nightmare. She leaves everyone wondering what kind of total disaster would go down if these things ever got out. Lauren asks if they can just put these ruins back to sleep, but Lapis admits she doesn't know everything about this stuff. Lauren stays quiet, but he's low-key, thinking that everything would go way faster if she just had all the answers. Lapis gets all defensive, arguing that every ruin is built differently, and it's definitely not because she skipped her research. She grabs his arm and tells him it's totally rude to have that look on his face. Lauren wonders what kind of face he's even making before she finally asks where they're actually headed. The Alepis think they should hunt down the private rooms where the ancient people used to live. There's a huge chance they'll find a manager or even a secret manual for the whole place hidden in there. Lauren wonders if people really lived in this place, but Lapis explains that teleporting cost way too much mana for a daily commute. Lapis explains that teleporting every day is a total mana drain, so it's way smarter for everyone to just stay there. And Lauren admits he never even considered the cost. She says it's way smarter to just live at the lab to keep things simple. And when Lauren asks if she's for real, she tells him that's exactly the plan. She's 100% sure these ruins have a secret living area for the researchers and staff hidden away somewhere. Lapis is hitting those rooms to find a way to shut the whole place down, but she's definitely going to swipe any loot she finds along the way. Lauren warns her to stop being so loud about her plan to loot the place, but she just won't listen. Lapis just shrugs it off, claiming it's not stealing if the owners have been dead for centuries, and even though Lauren isn't totally sold, he decides to just roll. But then a massive problem comes up. If the ancients were the ones who actually shut this place down themselves, then honestly, there's a huge chance all the important stuff was already packed up and moved out forever ago. Lapis realizes he's totally right, because if this place was already cleaned out, those manuals they need are probably long gone. Lauren asks what they're even supposed to do if there's nothing left, but Lapis just stares him down and asks what he thinks their next move should be. Lauren's brain is racing because more goblins are definitely coming, but Chuck is basically dead weight now that he's totally out of mana. He knows Ritz and Nim can still handle themselves, but his own gear is a total disaster. He's totally stressing out because his weapon is on its last legs and looks like it's about to snap. He shows her the blade and says it's going to snap after just 2 or 3 more kills, so Lapis asks if he's planning to find a new one soon. Lauren just sighs and says he'll worry about that later since finding info is the main goal, and Lapis totally agrees as she starts hacking away at the terminal. She says they finally made it to the residential district, and right on cue, a door nearby beeps loudly and unlocks. Lapis doesn't waste a single second, shouting that she's clearing the whole place out as she charges right through the entrance. Lauren stares at the total mess of a room, wondering if it's even safe without checking for traps. But then she brags about being a total pro at exploring ruins. She tells him to just chill and let her handle the searching, looking way too hyped to see what's hidden in all that junk. Lauren and Ritz are just standing there totally lost, and Lauren asks what's up, while Lapis starts chucking books and gear around like a maniac. Lapis chucks the old papers aside, complaining that she hasn't found a single useful thing in the whole pile. She just heads into the next room while the guys just stand there and watch her go. Lauren watches more junk crash down and tells everyone to just let her handle it since she's the real expert. Nim looks around at the old walls and tells Ritz that this is exactly where the people from the ancient kingdom used to live. Ritz grabs a piece of old tech and realizes that every single thing in this place is actually part of that ancient legacy. He asks if they can just grab the item and head out, figuring it's all the proof they need to show the job is done. Scouting these ruins was the whole reason they were there, and Lauren is 100% down for the plan. Lapis doesn't even look up from her book, saying she's totally cool with the plan as long as everyone actually makes it back alive. Ritz tells the crew they should bounce and report everything, since it's better to let the high-ranked pros handle this while things are still calm. Lapis just looks up and asks if he's really going to call in the big guns, like gold or even mithril rank adventurers. Lapis stares into the distance, wondering out loud how long it even takes for a message to reach those big shots way up there. Ritz looks down, sounding pretty nervous, as he starts to explain how this whole system actually works. Lauren finds out that top-tier ranks are actually insane to get, since gold is super rare, and anything higher is basically just a myth. Lapis turns her back and tells the group she won't stop them from leaving, saying she'll just be praying they make it home safe. She scans the whole area but can't find what she's looking for, so the rest of the squad starts heading out. She stays back to mess with the control panel while Lauren watches, calling her out for being totally cold to the rest of the group, but she just looks back and says there's no point in forcing people to tag along if they don't even want to be there. Lauren follows her into this giant library full of old books, but he stops dead in his tracks when he spots something, and he asks Lapis if it's officially a done deal now that he's stuck following her through these ruins. Lapis doesn't even look at him. She just starts breaking down exactly how things ended up like this. Lapis looks back with a shaky voice and asks Lauren if he's seriously coming with her. Lauren just gives her a chill grin, saying he's already way too deep in this to ever turn back now. Lapis's face instantly lights up with relief, and she tells him she's super happy to hear that. She straight up admits that even with her skills, taking on these ruins solo would have been way too much for her to handle. She gives him a quick thanks and starts digging through those old papers she found on the floor. Lapis tells Lauren she's got some awesome news, but he just gives her a major side-eye and asks what it is. She flashes a confident smirk and holds up a dusty book, explaining that she finally found the actual instruction manual for these ruins. He points out that it even has the exact steps to shut the whole system down the right way. Lauren is totally stunned and asks if she can really read that wild script from the ancient kingdom. Lapis just keeps on reading, casually reminding him that since she's a priestess for the god of knowledge, this is literally her entire job. Lauren's actually shocked by how good Lapis is at reading and asks if everyone serving the god of knowledge is a total brainiac. So, Lapis just flashes a huge confident grin and points at herself, bragging that she's definitely one of the smart ones. Lauren looks down at the ancient manual in her hands and asks what the actual game plan is for using it. Lapis points out a map in the book and explains that if they reach the control room, they can flip a switch to put the facility back to sleep, so they need to move out now. Ritz watches them from a distance and calls out, asking if they finally found what they were looking for. Lapis is stoked they actually found it, and Lauren turns to Ritz to ask what his squad is going to do next. Ritz doesn't waste any time and tells them he's definitely sticking with the crew after all. He realizes that sticking with Lauren and Lapis is their best shot at actually making it out alive. Lapis flashes a grin and takes charge, telling everyone they've got to hurry to the control room before things get even messier. Ritz follows behind, already thinking about what's going to happen the second they finally get there. So it looks like this whole crazy disaster is finally coming to an end, and Lauren remembers his first day as a total rookie, signing up at the guild right alongside another new guy. He remembers the receptionist calling out the name Ritz, and for some reason, it's just stuck in his brain. They didn't really talk, but Lauren kept hearing that Ritz was totally killing it, with way better reviews for the same exact jobs. Everyone was talking about how Ritz absolutely crushed those investigation missions, always staying way ahead of him. He had to sit there and watch Ritz climb the ladder to hit silver rank first, but that was a huge mistake. Lauren finally saw that he couldn't run from the truth anymore. He's always seen Ritz as his one true rival for life, but then Kurtz leans in and asks if Lauren is still obsessed with him. But Ritz just tells the old man to shut his mouth. Looking at how everything went down, Lauren is actually super glad he had that weird run. The receptionist says some ruins were just found near Ein Village, and they want 2 silver-ranked teams to team up and clear it out fast. She says their big payday depends on whatever they manage to find during the investigation. Lauren knows this is his big chance to finally settle the score and prove who's really the boss. Ritz steps up and introduces himself as the leader, acting like a total pro. Lauren's getting pretty annoyed by how chill this guy is, but he tells himself he's got to stay calm and keep that same energy. Out of nowhere, Naren totally snaps and starts screaming because she can't believe what's going down. She's totally losing her mind meeting the real Ritz in person. While Lulun just grins and says what a crazy coincidence this is, but then Naren isn't done yet, and she straight up asks Nim if she's really that legendary elf everyone hypes up, just because she's so gorgeous. Lulun bows to Kurtz and tells the old man he's heard all the crazy stories about his high-level magic. Ritz is left standing there totally lost, wondering how these random guys even know who they are. This old guy in armor says they've heard stories about Ritz's squad for ages, so it was super easy to recognize them. Then Naren jumps in with a huge grin, letting them know that their own leader is actually a total superfan. She's being super energetic and tells Ritz that Lulun is his biggest fan, while Lulun just stands there in the back looking like his soul literally left his body. Lulun finally snaps and starts screaming, asking her who the heck she thinks she's calling a fan. He starts popping off about how they're just rivals since they all started at the same time, but when he gets roasted for clearly keeping tabs on them, he tries to play it cool by saying they're just competition for this one job. He leaves Naren pouting and says she just wanted everyone to be friends now that they've finally met the legendary team they've always heard about. Lauren clicks his tongue, super annoyed that his big chance to look cool was totally ruined. Lapis quickly changes the subject and looks around, saying that whoever runs this place actually seems like a pretty chill person. She flips through an old book and points out there are 0 annoying riddles or weird items you have to find just to unlock a door. He tells Lauren that the guys who built this place made the puzzles so annoying you'd want to grab them by the shirt and just start swinging. Lapis leans in with a huge grin and taps Lauren on the arm, asking him if that's really how it's going down. Lauren just stares at her, wondering where she could have seen ruins like this before, but he decides to drop it since he knows her answer will just be something totally wild anyway. While they keep moving, Lapis casually claims she just read all that in a book, but Lauren gives her a deadpan look like he's not buying it for a second. She doubles down and swears she actually read it. But Lauren just gives a lame answer to shut her up while they keep walking. Ritz is looking super stressed as he tells the squad to hurry up and take the lead. They've got 0 clue when more goblins are going to jump out. He's totally losing it, muttering under his breath about how he ended up stuck with such a trash job. Lauren watches from the side, and honestly, he's starting to feel pretty bad for the guy. This was only supposed to be a quick scouting trip before they walked right into this total nightmare of a room. Lapis looks back and tells them they're the ones with the worst luck for walking straight into this total disaster. Lauren asks if she's reading his mind, but Lapis just tells him his face is making it way too obvious. She tells him he seriously needs to watch his back, then just switches the topic as they keep on walking. Ritz and his squad are the ones with the worst luck ever for trying to step up to them. Nim keeps quiet while Lauren nods along, totally agreeing with Lapis that Ritz's crew is in a massive mess. Their boots echo loudly against the stone floor, and Lapis tells the group they better keep it quiet for now. They finally made it to the spot, standing right in front of a massive stone wall that's totally cracked. Lapis tells everyone it's time to move, and right on cue that massive gear door starts rumbling open. Lauren stares at the massive machine and sighs, finally admitting that the whole setup is actually pretty epic. Lapis tells him to save the hype for later as they both step into the dark, creepy entrance. He finishes by saying they still have to face whatever's waiting for them at the top of those stairs. Lapis points to the main control panel and explains that this is the brain running everything in the ruins. Lauren stares at the crazy-looking machine and asks if she even knows how to use it. She just spills the truth to him, acting like it's the easiest thing in the world. Lauren keeps her eyes peeled and spots doors on both sides of the entrance. Lapis tells him to just chill and let her handle it since she's got this whole thing in the bag. She starts mashing the buttons, but then she suddenly freezes and sounds totally lost. Lauren asks what's going on and what those creepy red letters on the screen are even supposed to mean. Lapis gets the system running, but she's shocked when it completely ignores her command to stop. She swears she didn't mess up the controls, but she says the whole thing just feels super off. Lauren's left wondering why it's stuck when she followed every single step perfectly. Lapis checks out the machine and says she tried her best, but it's so ancient it might just be trashed, and if the hardware is dead, there's nothing she can do. Lauren notices the screen glitching and tells her it's suddenly covered in red text, asking what the heck is wrong with the machine. Lapis finally catches on and asks him straight up if this place is actually supposed to be a research lab. She points out that labs like this are usually packed with workers, and Lauren totally agrees. She points out that every staff member is already in the system, and Lauren asks what she's really getting at. Right then, the doors on both sides of the room burst wide open. Lauren's totally on guard and wants to know what's going on now that the whole room is shifting around her. Lapis tells him the biometric scan totally failed, and Lauren just repeats the words back because he has absolutely no clue what that even means. Lapis explains that only registered users can touch this stuff, and since she's not on the list, the system totally ignored her command to stop. Lauren is left totally confused while Lapis explains those red letters were just a warning that she didn't have permission to touch the console. Lapis admits she totally blanked on the warnings and just kept mashing the stop button on the machine. She messed up 3 times in a row, so now the whole console is totally locked down, and she says things just got way worse. Lauren just stares her down and asks why she's making such a huge scene. Lapis gives him a worried grin and explains that since the system flagged them as intruders, the entire facility just went into full-blown attack mode. Ritz completely flips out, shouting that this is a giant mess they have to deal with right this second. Lauren is still totally lost with all the tech talk and demands to know what's actually going down. That's when Nim jumps in, saying the ruins see them as nothing but trash that a pack of goblins needs to throw away. Lapis says the exit is totally blocked and they're now linked straight to the goblin factory, so they've got to take down whatever crawls through. Ritz has no choice but to grab his sword and get ready for things to get seriously messy. Lapis says sorry for the mess and promises she'll do whatever it takes to trick the system into stopping. Lapis starts messing with the controls, explaining that if she can just trick the system into letting them in, it won't even matter how many goblins are out there. While she gets to work, she warns the squad that she'll be a total sitting duck and completely defenseless while she's locked into the tech. This makes Ritz totally snap and he screams at her, demanding to know how she even learned to do stuff like that. Lapis just flashes him a huge grin and says it's all because she's a priestess for the god of knowledge. Lauren isn't falling for the act one bit and tells her that her fancy title isn't a free pass to do whatever she wants, but she just looks him right in the eye and swears she hasn't told a single lie since they got there. Lauren knows she's totally right, but she tells her to just drop it and get back to work on the machine. He grabs his massive sword and tells the squad they just need to buy her every second they can. That gets Lapis totally hyped, and she tells the crew she's counting on them to watch her back while she gets to work. Ritz tells Kurtz to go stay with Lapis, since he's totally out of magic, and the old guy just apologizes for being useless. Nim screams that the bad guys are finally here, and the whole squad locks in while Ritz grips his sword. He grits his teeth and calls those monsters total pests, saying they have no choice but to fight, and luckily that tiny door is giving them a huge advantage. He starts barking orders, telling Nim to guard the tech and Chuck to cover them with his bow, and even though Chuck grumbles, he tells him to just shut. Ritz is already shouting across the way, telling Lauren he's totally counting on him to hold it down over there. Lauren keeps his answer short and stays totally chill, staring straight down the path in front of them. The whole team scatters and sprints to their marks, moving fast to get set before the big fight kicks off. Ritz takes the lead, smashing right through a stone wall with his shield and charging deep into the room. Suddenly, this massive jacked goblin in a ripped shirt shows up and growls that the pests have finally arrived to face him. Lauren just steps up with his massive sword, tells the squad he's got this big guy covered, and then he slams into the monster so hard that a massive shockwave rips through the entire area. Lauren lands a massive hit right on the goblin's arm, sending the beast stumbling back. The monster tries to swing back with a huge overhead strike, but Lauren just stands his ground and catches the punch on his massive sword. He feels the handle vibrating like crazy and realizes his sword is finally at its breaking point. Chuck watches the whole thing go down and calls it insane, then quickly shouts over to Lapis to see how she's doing. Ritz is totally losing his cool, screaming over all the noise to ask how much longer this job is going to take. Lapis doesn't even look up from her work, telling him she's already giving it everything she's got, and she reminds them she's literally breaking into an ancient ruin, so expecting her to finish in 2 minutes is just straight up crazy. She's totally locked in on the gear, and she's pretty sure it won't even take an hour to finish. Nim snaps that they're totally out of time because she's down to her last few arrows, and Kurtz admits his magic is about to tap out too. Chuck keeps hacking away at the massive crowd, muttering under his breath because it feels like these enemies are just never ending. Lauren's already breaking a sweat as the fight drags on, and he starts to wonder if these enemies are actually getting way stronger or if he's just losing it. But right behind the front lines, he spots a goblin lugging a massive sack and realizes they're actually cleaning up the battlefield. But he's totally confused why they're worried about picking up bodies right in the middle of a fight. Lapis keeps working and explains that they're doing this because those bodies are actually super valuable materials for the ruins. She looks back looking super worried and says this isn't just some basic collecting. They seriously have to stop those guys from taking the bodies away. Yared screams back that there's no way they can do that, because just holding off this wave is taking every bit of strength they have left. Lauren asks her straight up, what's the real reason they absolutely have to stop the body retrieval? Lapis reveals they're recycling those bodies to make new ones. And even worse, they're using the dead guy's data to build superpowered versions. She explains it's all about combat data, so every goblin they take down just helps the system make the next ones way more dangerous. She checks the manual and realizes that once the body is ready, the system uploads all those new experiences in just a few seconds. Things get way worse when she realizes this room is hooked right into the production floor, meaning those upgrades are coming in fast. Lauren grips his sword tight, realizing that the longer he waits, the stronger and more endless these goblins are going to get. Lapis explains that once the system downloads enough data from the regular mobs, it starts spitting out these beefed-up reinforced versions. And it's totally working because a goblin actually blocks an arrow with his shield, proving these guys are learning way too fast. Ritz spots the change instantly and points out that the way they're swinging those weapons is on a whole new level. He screams out in total frustration because he can't believe the upgraded models are already showing up this early in the raid. Ritz won't stop complaining about how annoying these smart goblins are, while Lauren stays totally silent and keeps her eyes locked on the path ahead. Lauren spots this huge jacked goblin stepping up and realizes the reinforced ones have finally made it to his side too. One of those massive beasts swings a giant club down to crush him, but Lauren barely gets his sword up in time to block it. He ducks right under that massive swing as it zooms past his head, and then he quickly moves in. He snaps back into his fighting stance and stares the monster down, waiting for it to make the next move. Lauren's breaking a sweat and looks totally fed up because he realizes these goblins are way different from the normal ones. He realizes their skin is way tougher now, and their movements are just on a whole different level. He stares right into the eyes of the giant monster, looking totally locked in as he starts to speak. He snaps at the goblin, asking if it seriously just had the nerve to laugh right in his face. Lauren keeps pushing, asking the monster if it's seriously trash-talking him and calling him weak just because he's human. He just stands there in total silence for a second. Then he lets out a sharp breath and drops right into his fighting stance. That goblin keeps smirking like he's already won, making Lauren totally snap and scream at him to stop playing game. He charges in with a super fast sideswipe that lights up the whole place the moment it hits. He puts every ounce of strength into one massive swing and sends that monster flying back. They're just trading massive hits back and forth while sparks and rubble fly everywhere. Lauren and the monster slam into each other, setting off a massive flash of light. That totally blindsides the goblin while Lauren keeps on the move. Lauren doesn't even budge as a massive shockwave sends everything else flying. Chuck is sweating buckets watching the fight, wondering what the heck is even going on. It's just like those insane rumors he's been hearing, but Nim snaps at them to quit gawking and finally start acting like the silver ranks they're supposed to be. She looks over with a totally serious face and warns him that things are actually getting pretty bad. It looks like that massive sword Lauren is swinging is finally about to snap. Lauren clutches her beat-up sword as someone lets out a massive scream of pure shock. Ritz shouts for Lapis, trying to get her to look his way while everything is still going crazy. Lapis is totally feeling the heat at the terminal, yelling that she knows exactly what's going down, but there's a massive glitch. She's already ordered the base to shut down and freeze the goblins, but the final command to turn off the main computer is totally ignoring her. Ritz is left standing there totally clueless, asking what that's even supposed to mean for what's happening right now. Lapis totally flips out and screams that the machine she's working on just won't shut down. If this one piece finally shuts down, it'll trigger a massive chain reaction that silences the ruins, stops the goblins, and makes the whole place just crumble to pieces. Ritz gets a wild look on his face and asks if they can just fix everything by smashing the device to pieces. Lapis snaps back and tells him to go right ahead and try it if he's really that brave. She screams that this isn't just some random junk, because it's been running perfectly for hundreds of years without any repairs. So, breaking it would totally kill the system, but trust me, it's not going to be that easy. Ritz doesn't care about any of that technical stuff, and just tells Lapis to get out of his way. Ritz smashes his sword against the bot and screams about how freaking hard the metal is. Lapis explains that the whole surface is shielded by magic, so a wimpy little attack isn't going to break a thing. She warns them that unless they have a legit magic sword, breaking this thing is totally impossible. Ritz ignores the warning and swings anyway, but his sword just shatters into pieces the second it hits that metal. He's just standing there, gasping for air and staring at what's left of his broken handle. Lapis is totally freaking out because the system won't shut down, while Ritz is still dead set on just smashing the device to pieces. Lapis dares him to give it a shot if he's such a tough guy, but he just keeps whining about how the metal is way too hard to break. Suddenly, Lauren's voice blasts through the noise as he screams for Lapis to get away from that console right now. He doesn't even wait for an answer, and just bolts straight at her with everything he's got. Lapis is totally blindsided and starts scrambling to get away before he can reach her. Lapis stares at the ground with her eyes wide open, suddenly freezing in place as she spots something that stops her dead in her tracks. She spots a weird stone on the ground and realizes it's actually a piece of gear from a goblin magician. She realizes it's actually a mana-lost necklace, an item that sucks up magic and explains why everything is going totally haywire right now. Lauren's pretty sharp and figures that since it's been sitting in the nest forever, it's probably overflowing with mana, so he clenches his teeth and gets ready to jump in before things get way worse. Ritz is totally losing his mind, staring at his snapped sword on the floor and screaming at it to move like it's actually going to listen. Kurtz is totally shook as the air shifts, and he can't believe the machine's protection spell just straight up vanished. But while they're totally distracted, a massive pack of goblins crawls out of the shadows with their weapons ready to strike. Chuck spots them and starts freaking out, screaming that the goblins are closing in and they're in huge trouble. That broken sword is just lying there on the ground, leaving the whole squad totally wide open as the mob rushes in. Lauren puts everything he's got into one final strike, screaming for the item to shatter as he smashes it. He shatters the rock with a massive hit, but he's totally wiped out and gasping for air while the monsters close in. But suddenly, just like that, everything flips as the whole swarm of goblins suddenly loses all their strength and slams into the dirt like heavy rocks, leaving, while the rest of the squad stands there totally stunned. Ritz asks if the monsters really just froze up, because he can't even believe what he's seeing. They're totally safe now, and as one of them realizes he can move again, he figures out the magic blast missed them because the range was actually super small, which was a... Lapis catches a massive break when she realizes that attack barely missed her hiding spot in the back. She can't help but grin at how it all went down, telling Lauren she's seriously hyped he pulled off such a wild plan while the stakes were so high. Lauren is standing there dripping with sweat and looking totally wiped out, and he tries to say something back, but Lapis isn't letting him off easy, and she totally goes off on him for pulling such a crazy and dangerous stunt out of nowhere. Right as he tries to walk away, his legs finally give out, and he just collapses from being totally exhausted. Lapis screams for Lauren as his body finally gives out, and he slams face first into the dirt. Ritz is standing right there as one of his teammates points out the chaos and tells him he's got to check it out. Just look at this. Ritz is so shocked he can't even finish his sentence, just staring at how everything went down, but A bit later, Lauren finally opens his eyes to find Lapis right there, looking super happy and telling him she's so glad he's finally awake. Lauren's just trying to get some sleep, but Lapis is sitting right on his stomach reading a book like he's a piece of furniture. She acts like it's the most normal thing ever, but Lauren isn't having it and reaches up to flick her right on the forehead. She's clutching her head in pain while he tells her she seriously can't just go around sitting on random guys like that. Lapis acts like it's no biggie and tries to explain that there were literally no other seats, but Lauren isn't falling for it and points out that even without a chair, she could have just used the empty spot on the bed instead. Lapis doesn't even use him as a pillow. She just looks away and pouts, complaining that the bed is way too hard and is totally hurting her butt. Lauren slowly blinks his eyes open, looks around and asks where he is and if he's in a hospital. Lapis leans over him, confirms they're definitely in a hospital, and asks if he wants to hear the wild stuff that happened after he passed out. She leans in close, asking him how much of that fight he actually remembers. Lauren thinks back and says his memory is a total blank after the moment he chucked his giant sword at that machine. Lapis tells him his brain is working totally fine, and that his massive freakout was actually the good kind of rage. That totally catches him off guard, so he asks her if there's really a difference between losing it in a good way or a bad way. Lapis smirks and says, duh, but she quickly changes the subject to what happened right after he threw his sword. Back at the guild, the AWA staffer checks out their paperwork and thanks the team for the full breakdown of the ruin investigation. The official tells them they crushed it and says they can pick up their reward money at the window right next to them. He glances back at the board for a second and tells them there's one more thing they really need to know. Back at the desk, the receptionist checks the tags and confirms they definitely belong to that silver-ranked team who took the same job. She explains they were a four-man squad and starts dropping the leader's name while Lauren just stares at that cracked, filthy metal tag. The staff member looks totally bummed out, saying she really hopes they find the rest of the guy's gear the next time they search the area. She packs everything up and tells Ritz and the squad that the guild will handle all the boring paperwork from here. Later, Ritz stares up at the sky, thinking about how he finally knows the names of the missing group. He admits to himself that he really wanted to hear those names straight from their own mouths, instead of just reading some report. He tries to shake off the awkward mood and starts breaking down the details of the case they just finished. Ritz scratches his head and admits they found zero loot. And after paying for all their gear and hospital bills, they're actually completely flat broke. Oxy looks over with a little smirk and tells him that even if they're flat broke, they're still the biggest win of all. The wildest part is that every single person in the squad actually made it back home alive after all that chaos. Kurtz looks totally at peace, closing his eyes with a smile as he admits he's just really glad he got to meet those two. Ritz zones out for a second like he just remembered something huge and mentions that now that he thinks about it, he's still losing it over how insane Lawrence fought in that control room, saying it reminded him of a total legend. Ritz starts telling this old legend about a warrior who moves just like the wind. He explains that the rumor says once that wind blows through, everything it touches gets totally ripped to shreds. Lauren looks super serious with that bandage on his head, and Ritz starts to wonder if he's actually the legendary mercenary known as the Severing Wind. He shakes the thought off instantly, telling himself a legendary mercenary would never be caught dead working as a bottom-tier copper ranker. But he's still feeling pretty sketched out because it's super weird for so many people to be this insanely good at fighting, especially since Lauren was the only actual mercenary. Lapis calls the guys out, saying if they have energy to gossip, they should be fixing their wounds, right before someone suddenly screams in pain. She's acting super chill and collected, just moving the talk along like it's no big deal. Lapis explains that her commands to the ruins work perfectly, and since the control device is totally trashed, the security lock finally let go. She grins and says the ruins are basically trash now, making Lauren look up and ask if she's actually serious. Lapis points out the device is so trash that the necklace's power literally erased the magic circuits, and modern magic isn't even on the same level as this tech. She says Ritz and his crew were actually whining about that tiny rule, but she's pretty sure they were just messing around. Lauren realizes that since their target is basically garbage now, it makes total sense why they're getting paid way less. Lapis agrees that the whole mission was a total bust with nothing to show for it. But hey, at least they still walked away with a massive payday. Lauren sighs and admits that even with all that cash, the whole situation still turned into a total disaster for everyone. He's already thinking about finding Ritz to apologize later, while Lapis just stands there watching him totally freak out. She keeps her mouth shut, but she's low-key worried that getting mixed up with Ritz's crew is going to be a massive headache later on. They start talking about the ruins, and Lapis says one last team is going to check the place out before they seal the entrance forever. Lapis finishes explaining that the machine is total junk now, so it's fine to leave it behind, but she's just being super careful. Lauren's all bandaged up and just nods, finally realizing the whole mission is officially over. He stares at the ceiling, asking who the heck dragged him all this way and what hospital he even ended up in. Lapis just stares him down and tells him straight up that she's the one who hauled him back all by herself. She couldn't really ask Ritz and his squad for backup because they were already busy patching up their own wounded guys. Even though they totally helped out at first, but she tells him they're actually just taking a breather in the town of Kaffa right now. Lauren tells her he seriously owes her one for going through all that crazy trouble. Lapis just flashes a smile and tells him to chill, especially since their goblin quest was a total fail anyway. She points out that 3 of their friends are gone. The nest is still crawling with monsters, and they don't even have proof of the goblins they took down. Lauren is totally stunned and immediately asks what the heck happened to that bag of ears they collected. Lapis spots the ripped pouch and figures it must have fallen off during the scrap, leaving Lauren to mumble curses about losing all that sweet loot. She explains that once he blacked out, Ritz had no choice but to focus on getting everyone out of there as fast as possible. Ritz warned everyone that the coast wasn't clear yet, so hanging around to scavenge for loot was way too risky. Lapis reminds him they're totally out of time and options, especially since a massive wave of goblins is swarming them now that the main order has stopped. Lauren says they could have just grabbed any random thing nearby to show the guild, but Lapis straight up admits she saw the proof but ditched it on purpose because it was just dead weight slowing her down. Lauren is totally crushed when it finally hits him that they survived all that craziness just to end up with 0 cash. He's lying there with his head all wrapped up, finally admitting that after how crazy things got, he's lucky to even be alive. He can't stop thinking about everyone they lost, especially Sarf and the rest of the squad. He knows they were total idiots, but they were actually good guys, and losing them like that still hits him really hard. Lauren stares at the ceiling, feeling totally guilty for dragging Lapis into this absolute disaster. She's the one stuck looking after him, but she just flashes a soft smile and says it's really no biggie. She's trying to stay positive, saying that if any girls were left in the other group, the rescue team might have already found and saved them. Lapis reminds him those were just basic goblins, so it's totally possible some people actually survive. After things go quiet for a second, she suddenly switches vibes and tells him they need to talk about something totally different. She explains that even though they walked away with 0 cash after that disaster, they're still stuck with a massive pile of bills to pay. Lauren looks totally stressed, but then she drops a bombshell. She already paid the fee using money she swiped right from his own wallet. Lauren looks like he's about to snap, especially when she drops the bomb that the hospital bills are a whole separate nightmare. She tells him she's got his back for now, so he takes a deep breath and asks exactly how long he's been out of the game. Lapis does the math and realizes it's been 3 days total, counting his full day of travel and the 2 days he spent getting patched up in the hospital. Lapis keeps that big grin on her face while she crunches the numbers, telling Lauren the total comes out to 5 silver coins. Lauren lets out a massive sigh, but then she just brushes it off like it's absolutely nothing. She gets right in his face while he's still down and tells him the cash is the last thing he should worry about because she's not just giving him a regular loan, she's actually skipping the interest, even though Lauren points out he's way too broke to pay her back anyway. Lapis takes it even further, promising not to bug him about the cash and saying he can just pay her back in tiny amounts whenever he can. Lauren just stares her down, feeling like something is totally wrong, and asks her straight up if this deal is just way too good to be true. But there's actually a massive secret behind why she's making this crazy offer. She actually looked after him all by herself on purpose, just so he'd end up totally broke and forced to rely on her for everything. She knows using cash to trap someone is a total low blow, but honestly, she doesn't care one bit as long as it gets the job done. She gulps hard and starts explaining that she doesn't want his money. She's actually looking for something else entirely. Lapis gets right in Lauren's face with a super intense look and asks him to just travel with her for a while. She breaks it down, saying that if they team up, they're an official party, which keeps the creeps away and makes them look way more legit to anyone hiring adventurers. She explains that even with her insane demon powers, a girl traveling solo as a priestess is basically a total magnet for trouble, so she leans in super close to tell him he's actually got some serious talent. But here's the biggest thing. Even after finding out she's a demon that everyone else would hate, Lauren didn't change at all and refused to treat her like a monster. She tells him that, more than anything, there's a massive reason why she wants him specifically. To her, he's the only person she can actually trust because he's the one who saved her life. She figures if he just stops obsessing over the cash, having a priestess around is going to be a total game changer for his career anyway. Lapis stares him down, waiting for a response, and asks him straight up what he actually thinks about this whole situation. Lauren's just lying there staring up at her, finally admitting he's in no spot to say no to her right now. Lapis leans in super close, looking totally hyped, as she asks if he's finally saying yes to her proposal. Lauren yells right back, telling her she better promise to stay until that massive debt is finally paid off. Lapis flashes a massive grin and tells him she's totally down for that deal. She makes it official, telling Lauren that she's in his hands from here on out. Lauren sighs and gives in, but then she points out that she seriously needs to get off him. But hold up, Lapis is actually hiding a huge secret about this mission because, standing there all by herself later, she realizes this whole job was actually a massive win for her. She flashes back to searching the manager's office for the manual, but she actually swiped a bunch of pricey jewelry and is totally flexing about how she outplayed those thieves. She swiped a ton of high-level magic gear, including a crazy necklace that somehow made all the magic in the area just vanish. She giggles to herself, since they've got tons of cash for the road, even if she feels a little bad that Lauren's debt is just going to keep stacking up. Lapis looks pretty stoked about how things ended, thinking it was totally worth all that crazy trouble. The real adventure is finally kicking off for Lauren, a bronze ranker who traded her life as a mercenary for being totally broke. He teams up with Lapis, a priestess who's secretly a demon just trying to figure out how the world works. Over at the tavern, some guys are freaking out because another village just got totally wiped out. One of them asked where it went down, only to find out it was that northern pioneer village they'd all heard about. This dude clutches his drink and starts ranting about how the big shots only care about grabbing more land just to get more tax money. They keep pushing these reckless plans to take over more land, but they don't even bother to protect the farmers doing all the hard work. Lauren sits nearby, listening to them rant about how the people in charge just take whatever they want and leave everyone else to die. Because let's be real, there's just no escaping the fact that money is what really runs the show. He realizes it's the same deal for everyone, from farmers and royals to mercenaries and even adventurers like him. Lauren's just staring off into space, stressing because he's totally broke and things are looking super bad. He decides to just drink his worries away, slams the whole glass, and faceplants onto the table with a massive sigh. Lapis walks in and catches him in the act, asking if he's seriously been drinking since the sun came up. That grabs his attention, and she says she totally gets why he'd want a drink after being stuck in the hospital for 2 extra days, but then she cuts to the chase and asks where he actually got the cash for that mug. Lauren starts sweating bullets as she asks if he forgot they're totally broke, realizing he just messed everything up. This is a total nightmare for a guy who only became an adventurer because his whole mercenary crew got wiped out, leaving him totally stranded. He's forced to take on these insane jobs just to stay alive, and that's exactly how he ended up stuck with his current partner. Then there's Lapis, a girl traveling with him who's secretly a demon hiding right under everyone's noses. Lapis keeps chewing him out for drinking on an empty stomach, but he just reminds her that he's totally broke. Lauren promises to cover the whole bill and calls the waitress over, so Lapis immediately orders an egg sandwich with 0 mustard. She adds a ham sandwich to the order, and as the waitress heads off, Lauren realizes Lapis is way more of a genius than your average priestess. Lapis tells the waitress to put Lauren's drink on her tab, while Lauren is totally tripping over how she can use both holy skills and demon magic at the same time. He knows traveling with her is a massive win for a beginner, but he's still feeling totally stressed out for some reason. Lauren shuts his eyes and lets out a massive sigh, wondering why he's so stressed out when things aren't even that bad. He asks how much the ham sandwich is, and she tells him it's 5 copper coins, the exact same price as the egg sandwich he just bought. Reality finally smacks him in the face, and he hangs his head, realizing his debt is just stacking up more and more every single day. Lapis just laughs the whole thing off, telling him that if he's so worried about being broke, they seriously need to go find a job. This takes him right back to why he started, reminding him he only became an adventurer because he was totally broke. He flashes back to meeting Lapis on that insane first mission where they almost died in some old ruins, and he can't believe he's still struggling after all that fighting. Lauren is totally flat broke, so Lapis is the one footing the bill for every single thing he needs right now. He's basically stuck traveling with her until that debt is totally paid off. And while he's actually digging the food at this guild tavern, there's a catch. He starts scarfing down his food, wondering if he'll ever actually have enough cash to pay her back. Lapis suggests they find some work, but then she reminds him that he's totally unarmed and needs a weapon first. Lauren knows she's totally right, and now she's wondering if there's even a single job he can do when he's got absolutely nothing to his name. Lapis tells him cleaning the sewers is a total no-go because that nasty smell would literally never wash off. They're supposed to be traveling together, but she's definitely not hanging out with him if he smells like a gross sewer. She just grins and says she can totally fix the smell if he's really that desperate to take the job. Lauren realizes the repair bill is way bigger than the actual prize, so he asks if there's literally anything else they can do. Lapis takes another big bite of her sandwich and says she's going to have to think about it. Lapis tells Lauren to drop the serious vibes and just focus on finishing their food for now. Lauren just shouts back from across the table that he didn't think he was saying anything that deep. Right then, some random dudes at the next table start whispering and telling each other to check Lauren out. They're talking so much smack, calling Lauren a total leech who's just mooching off some girl. They clown on him for being a weak copper rank, laughing about how they're actually jealous a girl is buying him lunch. The guy leaning back keeps roasting them, saying he wouldn't even mind grabbing some of those leftovers for himself. Lauren spots their tags and realizes these guys are actually iron rank adventurers. Lapis takes a sip of her drink and tells him he should probably just ignore them, but Lauren isn't having it, saying if you let people talk trash like that, they'll never stop treating you like a total joke. Lapis asks if that's just how mercenaries roll, even though she thinks dealing with guys like that is honestly a total waste of time. Lapis leans in with a sharp grin, telling them they're just salty because they can't find a girl who'll let them be total freeloaders. That instantly triggers the guys, and one dude jumps up screaming to ask what she just said. Lauren just gives a little laugh, and his eyes suddenly look way more dangerous than before. He tells Lapis she did an awesome job baiting them out, and now he's just going to wipe them all out in a flash. Lapis doesn't even flinch, just casually reminding him that murder is actually illegal and he should probably just skip that part. She warns him that while everyone ignores a regular brawl, he's definitely getting locked up if he tries to rob them once it's over. Lauren gives a lazy shrug, but Lapis warns him that if he smashes any furniture during the fight, he's totally paying for it. Then she just smiles and says she's paying for everything so he can go all out, even though Lauren thinks she's totally ruining the vibe. This iron-ranked jerk starts trash-talking from across the room, saying he'll let them off the hook if Lauren begs on the floor and hands over the girl, since a priest is always useful to have. He keeps talking smack, telling Lauren he's already bored of her and might as well just hand her over to the rest of the group. One of the guys totally snaps and screams at Lauren to just hand the girl over already. Lauren doesn't say a single word, he just clenches his fist and gets ready to jump into action. This guy gets launched across the room and slams into the wall, leaving a massive crater while everyone else just stands there in total shock. Lapis just sighs, thinking it's actually wild how people can talk so much trash to a lady. She actually decks the guy herself, looking totally over it as she drops him to the ground. A bit later, Lapis looks at Lauren and asks if they're seriously just picking weeds, calling the whole job totally lame. Lauren says they don't even need gear since these woods are right by town and totally monster-free, but Lapis points out that at 2 copper a pop, Ahill needs 750 plants to pay his debt. But Lauren tells her to shut it because she's totally killing the vibe. Lauren just stares at the tiny plant in his hand, looking totally lost since this definitely isn't his kind of job. Lapis keeps whining about how boring everything is, so Lauren finally snaps and asks why she even bothered showing up. Lapis looks at all the plants they grabbed and says she seriously needs to start making some of her own cash. She follows right behind Lauren, teasing him that it'd be super embarrassing if she had to lend him cash, especially since he's totally missing a bunch of the herbs they're supposed to find. Lauren just grumbles under his breath, admitting he's totally not built for this kind of boring grind. He lets out a massive sigh, thinking that if he could just get one real fight, he'd be able to wipe out his entire debt in a heartbeat. Lapis just smirks and points out that even if a fight kicks off, he doesn't even have any gear to use anyway. Lauren has to admit she's right, but he's still super salty since they barely found any loot worth selling. Lapis tells him that's just how it goes since it's a basic quest anyone can grab, so having this little is actually totally normal. Lauren realizes she's totally right and decides they should just head back to town. But then something stops them. Lapis starts crunching the numbers out loud, counting 30 copper for a room, 7 for food, and 2 for a drink, which means she needs 50 copper every single day just to survive. She looks at that tiny bag of herbs and realizes that even after all that grinding, they're still going to end up losing money today. Lapis tells him to just borrow more cash for better gear and a fresh start. But Lauren knows deep down he absolutely cannot do that. She's honestly wondering how other copper rankers even survive when the pay is basically trash. She figures they're all just desperate to pay off their debts, so they take on these insane high-paying jobs they can't handle and end up dead or just vanishing into thin air. He says the only smart move is to hit iron rank, so a solid party will actually want him, leaving Lawrence to just sigh at how brutal this world really is. Lawrence is starting to think his old mercenary job actually paid way better than this mess. He finally gets that the bosses and the guys crunching the numbers were actually struggling way harder than he ever realized back then. Lapis just tells him that's how life works, no matter how big the group is. But then, out of nowhere, Lauren suddenly shoves the bag of herbs right in her face, catching her totally off guard. Lapis asks if she's really the one stuck carrying the bags, but Lauren tells her that's not it, and to just pipe down for a sec. He snaps to attention and stares into the trees, warning her that something is definitely creeping around out there. Lauren says if there's actually something out there, they should just dip, and Lapis has to admit he's right. Lauren knows something is definitely wrong, and he refuses to take his eyes off those trees. They both freeze in their tracks when they spot someone lying in the grass just a few feet away. It's actually a girl with long hair just slumped on the ground like she's totally out cold. Lauren is standing there completely stunned while Lapis realizes this little girl is out here all on her own. She starts wondering why anyone would even step foot in a place like this. Lauren thinks she might just be lost, but Lapis takes a closer look and realizes the girl is in really bad shape. He points out she's totally barefoot, but check this out. The bottoms of her feet don't have a single scratch or bruise on them. Lapis notices her clothes are way too clean, which is super sketchy if she really walked all this way by herself. She finishes her check and notices the girl has zero muscle and skin that's way too soft for someone who actually spends time outside. Lapis looks at the girl who's totally out cold and points out that she looks like a super rich noble who's been pampered her entire life. Finding her in the middle of the woods is totally bizarre, but Lauren's thoughts are cut short when he senses something lurking nearby. Suddenly, a pack of forest wolves leaps out from the trees, growling and showing off their sharp teeth as they close in. They're totally cornered, so Lauren tells Lapis they gotta wipe these things out fast and save the girl, and Lapis is down, but he points out that Lauren is totally unarmed. But Lauren isn't worried at all, as he just cracks his knuckles and he walks right up to the pack and calls them nothing but weak puppies he can take down with his bare hands. The first wolf leaps at her, but Lauren blasts it with a punch so powerful it literally shakes the air. He just starts wrecking the whole pack, tossing those wolves around like they don't weigh a thing. Lapis just watches the total stomp, feeling like she's seen this before, while Lauren stands over the bodies, asking if they can even eat the meat. Lapis says it tastes gross, but the skins are worth some serious cash. Too bad Lauren doesn't even have a knife to start skinning them. Lauren asks how the girl is doing, and Lapis finishes her checkup, saying she's totally fine with no injuries or anything weird going on. Lapis just smiles and tells the girl she's super lucky, because it's a total miracle they found her before those wolves could get to her. Lauren watches and says, if she's got this much good luck, there's probably some poor guy out there dealing with the exact same amount of bad luck. Lapis agrees that the world is totally bizarre and asks if he knows anyone like that. But Lauren just stays dead silent. So Lapis asks what the plan is, since Lauren knows they can't just ditch her in the middle of the woods. Lauren lets out a tired sigh and says he's really not feeling the plan, but they'll take her to town and let the guild deal with the mess. He reaches down and grabs her, lifting her up to carry her back, but right as he does, he makes a super weird face. So Lapis stops and asks if something is wrong with the way he's holding her. Lauren just stares at the girl and says he can't believe how light she is, then starts laughing. Lapis thinks it's super weird too, especially since the girl looks way too fit to weigh that little. Lapis stares down at the girl, hunting for any hint that might reveal who she actually is. Lauren just tells her they can get the whole story whenever she finally wakes up, and then Lapis admits she's worried they look like total kidnappers carrying a girl around, but Lauren tells her to stop grouping him with the scary ones. The second they found her in the woods, a wild new journey had already started for both of them, and Lauren is honestly shocked they made it back through the city gates without any drama. Lapis says the guards are actually super chill, and since he's traveling with a priestess, nobody would ever guess he's a kidnapper. Lauren's blown away by how much power her title carries, and Cyan flexes that priests are on a whole different level when it comes to getting people to trust them. They finally make it to the Adventurer Guild in Kaffa, and the girl just sits there totally silent on a bench. A guild worker walks over to check the report, asking if they seriously found someone who needed saving out in the woods. Lauren confirms they've got the right person and tells the staff to go ahead and start the checkup. The receptionist with the glasses nods and says she'll handle the rest, asking if she can officially take the girl into her care. The staff jumps in to handle things because they can't just leave her sitting there forever. One of the guys picks the girl up and mentions the duo, but he's shocked by how light she is, which totally catches Lapis off guard. The receptionist keeps it strictly business and asks Lauren and Lapis to follow her back to the reception room for a sec. One of the guys hauling the girl away speaks up, making sure everyone knows they aren't just refusing to help. The guild isn't just letting her join without a catch, because they've got some serious stuff they need to settle first. They head inside and things get way more serious when the receptionist says it's finally time to get down to business. She leads the group into a private room and tells Lauren and Lapis she's about to be completely real with them. Lapis is totally stunned when the woman explains that the guild is actually banning them from going anywhere for a while. Lauren's totally caught off guard and asks what that's even supposed to mean, wondering if the guild actually thinks they're in big trouble. Lapis gets super defensive, throwing her hands up and telling the lady she's totally getting the wrong idea. The receptionist stays totally chill and says the guild has to check out that girl first. So Lauren and Lapis better stay put until they have a real plan. Lapis asks if there's something creepy about the girl they found, but the receptionist totally shuts her down and says she can't spill any secrets yet. Lauren looks totally fed up and asks how long they have to follow these rules, and the lady says it'll only be a few days until they get results, but for now they're totally stuck in the city, and Aishi says it'd be a massive help if they just stayed at an inn the guild picks out for them. Lauren's complaining about how strict everything is, but the receptionist just brushes her off and says their room at the Gokusai-te Inn is already waiting for them right on the main street. Lauren just brushes it off like the inn's name is nothing, but Lapis looks totally blown away the second she hears it. She turns to him and explains that this place is one of the top 2 fanciest spots in town, so it's definitely going to be crazy expensive. The receptionist chimes back in to say the guild is totally paying for their rooms and all their food. She tells them to go have a blast and just charge it to the guild, making Lauren wonder if adventurers are always this easy to win over with a little bait. Lauren isn't falling for any of this, and she tells the receptionist straight up that this special treatment is way too obvious, but then he's super suspicious because every mercenary knows that if a job pays way too much, it's usually a total trap. Lapis butts in and tells him to just be grateful and go with the flow, but Lauren snaps back that he doesn't need her lecturing him on how to feel. Lapis whips back to the desk and tells the receptionist she's got a major problem with how they're being treated. Lauren demands to know what's up with the girl they saved, and Lapis backs him up, making it clear they aren't just going to sit around until they get the full story. She stares the woman down and demands the truth, mostly wanting to know if this whole disaster is going to come back to bite them. The receptionist stays professional and tells them there's basically no danger since the staff recognize the girl, but they're totally in the dark until she wakes up, and it's going to be a few days before they can even confirm who she actually is. Lapis finally figures it out. The guild is just keeping them close to make sure she and Lauren aren't actually tied to the girl's past. She flashes Lauren a huge grin and tells him the guild's plan is officially a go. Lapis is grinning ear to ear, saying that once the guild confirms they aren't linked to that girl from the woods, they're totally off the hook, and she's mostly just hyped to live like royalty on the guild's dime for a few days. But Lauren isn't celebrating just yet. Instead, he gets straight to business and asks the receptionist if she actually put the cash in their rooms like she promised. The receptionist stays totally professional, promising to finish the paperwork right away, before asking if they're down for a double room at an inn called Gokusai-te. Lauren completely flips out, screaming that they need separate rooms or the whole deal is totally over. Lapis just shrugs it off and says she wouldn't have even minded sharing, which just makes Lauren even more annoyed, as he tells the priestess she needs to have some actual self-respect. While they're heading out, Lapis starts talking about the girl they found, guessing she's actually some super important noble from a place far away. She thinks it's totally sketchy to find someone like that alone in the woods, so she tells Lauren they should just chill at the fancy inn while the guild handles all the hard work. She looks over and asks if he's totally wiped out, thinking that whole desk conversation was just way too much for him. Lauren sighs and admits that's definitely part of the problem, but there's something else totally bugging him about how he's been feeling lately. He stares at his hand, realizing his body feels totally weak and off, and he can't tell if he's just getting rusty or if he totally lost his focus. Lapis tells Lauren it's totally normal for his body to feel like garbage after being sick and overdoing it, but Lauren just stares at his hand, wondering if that's the whole story. After 2 long days, a guild staffer finally calls them in to reveal the official results of the investigation. The lady in glasses tells them they're all clear and can finally travel again, thanking them for the help and saying they can go back to their normal lives, but Lapis is totally fed up and asks if that's seriously all they're getting, demanding a real answer for the people who are actually there. The staffer looks down and admits the guild bosses are keeping the rest of the info a total secret. She tells them straight up that the info is top secret, and only Iron Rank adventurers or higher get to hear the full story. Lapis totally snaps and starts yelling, reminding the lady that they're the ones who saved the girl, so they deserve to know what's happening regardless of the rules. Lauren suddenly grabs her shoulder, and she didn't see it coming at all. Lauren apologizes to the worker, explaining that his partner is a priestess for the god of knowledge, who totally loses it when people keep secrets from her. The worker admits she's heard the rumors about her kind, but she stands her ground and says the guild makes the final call, so her hands are tied. Lauren tells the lady he totally gets it and won't force her to spill any secrets, but he asks if the news is out yet, just hoping she can at least confirm that much for him. The receptionist confirms it's all set, explaining that they've already picked the right people and given them the full rundown. Lauren decides she's done for now, telling her they're finally taking their freedom and heading home as soon as they check out of the inn. Lapis tries to speak up, but the staff member totally ignores her and just thanks Lauren for all the help. As they walk away, Lapis looks totally ticked off and asks him why he just gave up on the whole thing so easily. She asks him if he's actually got some kind of secret master plan hidden away. Lauren says there's no point in pushing her anymore since she has to stay low-key, and forcing her to break the rules would just be a total disaster. He says forcing someone to talk is a total drag, so he'd rather just find someone who's already itching to spill the beans. Lapis asks if he's already got a target, and Lauren tells her to back him up, since he knows exactly what these guys look like. Lapis acts like everything is totally normal and grabs Lauren's arm, but he's not having it and tells her to quit it and listen up. She doesn't even care and tells him that since she has no clue where they're going, he better hurry up and start leading the way. They push into a packed tavern together, and Lauren has a quick word with the lady at the front counter. He heads deeper inside and swings open the door to the back area. Lauren finally spots his target, tells him it hasn't been that long, and asks if he can grab the seat right across from him. Chuck's just sitting there with a drink looking totally shocked, asking how they even managed to track him down. Lapis says she spent 30 copper coins on tips while digging for info, and she's definitely writing that off as a business expense. She waves like crazy and says it's awesome to see him again, while Lauren just stands there and watches. Chuck's just taking a slow sip of his drink, like he's totally done with hiding. He flags down a waitress and orders 2 more drinks for his surprise guests. Chuck tries to play it cool and turns down the drink, but Lauren calls him out for being totally broke anyway, so Chuck just grins and says since they had his back earlier, the least he can do is buy them all around. Lauren stares at the drinks and admits he feels like he barely helped, especially since the whole mission turned into a total mess. Chuck tells him to stop being an idiot, because even if the pay was trash, they're lucky they even made it out alive. Lauren says, "My bad," and drops the whole thing. But that just makes Chuck ask why they even tracked him down in the first place. He gets right in their faces and demands to know what they're really after. Lapis explains that they actually stumbled across a random girl in the woods just a few days ago. Chuck's totally shocked and asks if they're the ones who started that massive mess, especially since he heard the guild is hiring top-tier pros to deal with. Lauren just tells him that Lapis was the one who wanted to dig up more dirt, which it all finally clicks for Chuck, and he nods along as he realizes exactly why they showed up. Chuck kicks back and reminds them he's a silver rank pro, so he's not about to start blabbing their secrets. He tells them only low-tier trash would ever blab about their missions, and guys like that will never even make it to silver rank. Lauren's down, but he warns that if there's cash on the table, Chuck is the only guy he knows who would actually sell that info. Chuck thinks it over and decides that since Lauren helped him out, he'll spill everything, as long as they swear to keep his name out of it. Lauren swears they won't cause any drama, and Lapis is right there nodding her head because she's totally down. Chuck finally caves, but he warns them he's not even sure if what he heard is actually legit, so he tells them it's totally their call and starts spilling everything he knows. Maya realizes the girl they just saved is actually Sheena Lombardia from the city-state of Hansa. Lauren's totally lost, but Lapis tells her it's just a tiny country about a 3-day carriage ride to the south. She has no clue what the girl's name is, but she says the Lombardia family is a massive deal that basically runs the whole city. Chuck's blown away by how much Lapis knows about the Lombardia family, but she just gives him a smug grin and tells him he should probably start hyping her up for being so smart. Chuck keeps going and drops a total bombshell. Sheena is actually the only daughter of the guy who runs the whole city. He takes a sip and says her status is so high it's honestly insane. With a family name like hers, the guys in charge couldn't just push her around or treat her like some random nobody. Lauren stays dead serious and just nods, wondering what a big deal girl like her was doing out there in the first place. He finally asks the big question. If she's really such a big deal, why were he and Lapis the ones being locked down and watched 24/7? Chuck breaks it down and says the big bosses just didn't want them running their mouths about what they saw. He warns her that it's a total disaster for a rich girl to be found alone in the woods, because if word gets out, every creep in the area will show up to mess with her. Chuck points out that since nobody officially hired them, there's no reward money, and they haven't even confirmed if she's actually the girl they're looking for. Lapis is losing her mind that her ID still isn't cleared after 2 whole days, but Chuck just shrugs and says he's just the messenger. Chuck downs another drink and mentions that even though the guild trusts her, the messenger they sent to her hometown hasn't returned yet, But Lauren just shrugs it off and says the trip probably just takes a while. Lapis jumps in to explain that big groups usually give their messengers magic items to send back check-in signals. But it looks like the signals have gone totally silent, and Chuck's just smirking because the guild is freaking out, terrified they'll ruin their connection with that elite family if they mess up with her. Since things are getting way too risky, he says the guild is hiring a bunch of iron-rank teams to guard her and get her back to Hansa safely, but Chuck admits the pay is totally mid, so the silver-rank pros won't even look at the job, and that's when Lauren realizes the info wasn't some big secret. The guild doesn't usually spill official secrets to low-level copper ranks like them, so Lapis stays quiet for a second before she looks up with a dead serious face and asks what they have to do to get in on this mess. Lauren asks if there's a huge reason she's so into this, but Chuck just thinks she's being her usual curious self. Lapis gets right in their faces, asking why a rich girl who has everything would end up passed out in the middle of nowhere. She refuses to back down and says she just has to know the truth, while Lauren looks totally wiped out in the background. Lapis knows the guild won't give them the time of day since they're only copper rank, so she suggests finding a sneaky loophole to jump into the action. Lauren isn't buying it for a second and says there's no way that works, but then Chuck steps in and says it's actually possible, totally catching her off guard. Chuck explains that if a silver rank pro vouches for you, even copper ranks can jump ahead and take on those tougher iron rank missions. He says since Ritz is already on the case, getting a recommendation is super easy, and if Ritz gives the okay, they're totally joining the mission. Lapis gets totally hyped and says the plan sounds awesome, but Lauren immediately covers her mouth to shut her up. Boiler gets dead serious and asks Chuck if he's actually down for this, because if they mess up, they're going to ruin the reputation of everyone who vouched for them. Chuck just flashes a confident smirk and tells him he's not worried about that at all. He's positive Ritz would feel the same way. But he's just putting the idea out there so Lauren can do whatever he wants. Though if he actually takes the job, Lauren jumps in and holds Lapis back, telling them they need to check their weapons and gear before they even think about starting. Lapis starts fumbling through a bunch of excuses for being so pushy, while Lauren just buries his face in his hands like he's already totally regretting this. Lauren says sorry to Chuck and promises his gear will be ready in just one day, then asks if they're finally good to start the plan. Chuck just starts laughing his head off, calling Lauren a total softie who lets that girl boss him around. Lauren tells him to shut it, since he already knows the deal. So Chuck starts the paperwork because the gear drops tomorrow. Chuck points out that with no silver ranks around, getting approved should be a total piece of cake, and Lauren tells him she's really counting on him to make it happen. The moment they're alone, Lauren looks Lapis dead in the eye and just straight up asks her for some cash. Lapis realizes he needs the gear for that giant sword of his, and Lauren tells him he's got to buy it or he'll just be dead weight for Chuck's team. She asks when the mission starts, and Lauren tells her they've got at least 3 days to wait while they check on the girl they saved, giving them a bit of a break. Lapis is totally down to help, but she's broke right now and needs a full day to scrape the cash together. Lauren says he's totally fine waiting, so Lapis heads out the door to start gathering the cash. Now that Lapis is gone, Chuck throws an arm around Lauren and tells him that since he's free, he might as well stay and grab a drink. Chuck kicks back with his drink and laughs about how they're both struggling since they fell for such weird girls. But Lauren just stares at him and asks how the heck they even started talking about this. Chuck admits he's totally in the loop and explaining that even though Nim works him to the bone, he's fallen hard for her and actually digs her bossy attitude and skinny frame. He keeps yapping about how Nim's sharp attitude is actually her best trait. So Lauren warns him that if Nim hears that, she'll turn him into a human pincushion on the spot. Night's finally over, and the shutters creak open as the sun pops up to start a brand new day. Lapis shows up looking totally shocked and asks Lauren if he really spent the whole night at the bar, though she figures that's just how things went down. Nim walks in with her classic serious look, letting everyone know she finally tracked down Chuck's secret hideout. Lapis tries to be super friendly and says it's been a while, but Nim totally shuts her down. All while Lauren and Chuck sit there looking absolutely wrecked from a hangover. Lapis apologizes to the squad, explaining that after they split up yesterday, she totally forgot to find a place to crash for the night. She tells Lauren not to stress because she's already handled everything, even moving his bags since he barely had any stuff anyway. Lauren just stares her down and tells her that this whole mess is going to make him look really bad. Lauren asks how she even got into his room, so Lapis explains she just told the staff they were together, and since it worked way too easily, Lauren realizes the security is actually total trash. The guild vouched for this place, so it should be legit. But seeing how easily they let her in has him feeling super sketched out about the whole situation. Nim looks at the total disaster on the floor and tells Chuck to get his butt up, but he's still completely out cold from drinking all night. Lapis asks if Nim really came all this way just for Chuck, and Nim's like, yeah, I'm here to grab that loser and get him moving. Lauren tries to act cool, like he was down to drink, but he eventually admits he spent the whole night stuck listening to Chuck brag about his love life. Nim tells Lapis that Lauren is actually a solid dude, and she should take some notes, making Lapis wonder if she's really that much of a bad girl. Nim lets them make the final call and tells them to chill, promising she'll cover the tab and tell Ritz that Lauren was just showing his junior a good time. She gives a quick wave and heads out, taking Chuck in tow along with her. Nim drags the hungover dude right out of the room, while Lauren and Lapis just stand there in the quiet morning sun. Lapis wonders if she should apologize, but shrugs it off. Then she bugs Lauren again about being a bad person, until he finally tells her to just drop. Lapis wants to hit up the shopping district, so Lauren just tags along as they start wandering through the streets together. She starts schooling him on how an adventurer's whole life depends on their gear, basically saying he won't make a dime without solid weapons and armor, so she takes one look at his gear and tells him it's totally trashed and needs an upgrade. But Lauren says he's been rocking the same set since his mercenary days. She tells him she's already found some fire gear that'll look sick on him, so he just needs to trust her as they head through the city. The two of them walk right through the packed streets, and everyone nearby stops in their tracks just to get a look at them. Lapis explains that since he takes a ton of hits when he fights, he definitely needs something way tougher than just basic leather armor. She shows him her top pick, which is just a long, dark coat, but Lauren isn't feeling it at all, since a coat doesn't even count as armor. Lapis swears that even though it looks like a basic jacket, it's actually a legit magic tool she's super hyped to have found. This fabric is actually a super rare weave made of black spider silk, and she tells him it's a massive steal for just 5 gold coins. She explains that gear with both protection and auto repair usually costs 10 times more. So this coat is basically a total steal. Lapis keeps hyping up the coat, saying it'll make his defense go crazy if he wears it over his armor. But Lauren asks what would happen if she told the clerk it's actually worth 10 times more. Lapis isn't even sweating it, saying it's the shop's own fault for being clueless about their stock. But right as she says it's not their problem, she suddenly freezes and starts looking around. The shopkeeper looks up from his papers and gives them a major side-eye, making Lauren super nervous, while Lapis just stands there like it's no big deal. Lauren leans in and asks if the guy finally figured out their plan, and man, he is totally starting to sweat. Lapis just grins and tells him to relax, because the guy is totally clueless, and even if he catches on, they'll just buy it before he can swap those price tags. She starts looking around the shop totally lost, saying it's super weird because the one thing she wanted has just completely vanished. She asks the shopkeeper where it went and if someone bought it, but the old guy just laughs and says nobody would ever buy that piece of junk. So he shoved it in the back room to get it out of the way. Lapis is totally shocked to even budge the thing. But the shopkeeper tells her it was a massive struggle that took a whole group of guys just to get it through the door. She asks him to show it off, but he tells her she's got to wait because it's not the kind of thing he can just whip out whenever he wants. Lauren scans the rest of the weapon racks and realizes that even though this shop is tiny, the gear is actually top tier. Lauren eyes a small blade and decides he'll grab a backup later once he's actually got some money to blow. But then he realizes he has zero clue when that's actually going to go down. And right as he's wondering, something catches his eye and he spots this massive high-tier longsword sitting on the rack that looks like a total beast. So some random adventurer nearby spots him and looks totally ticked off for some reason. Lauren reaches for the sword, but the guy screams at him to get his hands off it right now. This dude snatches the hilt away before Lauren can even touch it, claiming he totally saw it first. He scans Lauren from head to toe and admits he finally picked a weapon that doesn't suck for once, but then he talks smack, saying a meathead like Lauren could never handle a sword like this and should just stay in his lane. The guy marches right up to the counter and tells the shopkeeper he's buying that sword on the spot. Lauren's just standing there totally clueless about who that guy was, but hey, it's not like he actually had the cash for that sword. Lapis walks over to see what's up, but Lauren just looks down and says it's nothing, totally trying to ignore that annoying guy. But Lapis isn't buying. Lapis spots the empty rack and realizes that longsword they had finally sold. She admits the sword was fine since she rigged it herself, but then she stops and says that's not even it, because he's got something way cooler to show him, and she says she found a legendary masterpiece that makes that other sword look like total trash. Lauren doesn't hate how confident she is, but he knows her big mouth is eventually going to get her into some real trouble. He grabs the edge of the heavy sheet and grunts as he yanks it back to see what she's talking about. One look at that weapon, and he knows Lapis has found something totally insane yet again.